This is the Environmental Protection Commission, regular meeting Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. This is a regular meeting. First piece, we have, this is new business, EPC 19-2025, PL 25-98, 4 Rabbit Lane, Alferi Enterprises, LLC, to install a 55-gallon above-ground propane tank in and approximate to the wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. The property lies along the west side of Rabbit Lane, just north of Overbrook, and is identified as map 10. Lot is 09, zone is R1. It is exactly 1.00 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the application has made its way to the agenda tonight. First order of business is to acknowledge its receipt, start the statutory time clock, and determine if the public hearing is warranted for this application to install and maintain a 55-gallon above-ground propane tank. Also to solicit any initial comments you may have. This particular application, it sits in lawn, but it's within 50 feet of the designated wetlands. This is one where it may be accomplished over the next month as an agent approval.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I would suggest it be an agent approval myself.
I agree with that.
I agree.
There we go. By the way, it's missing the project narrative.
Yep, we have a list
Okay,
of things
just,
that we have to
I
address.
just want the file to be complete. That's all.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. EPC 2025, PL 25-113, 17 Searles Road, E. Hammond and J. Hammond to construct residential additions, walls, modified driveway, and other related features in or approximate to special flood hazard area and watercourse. The property is located along the east side of Searles Road, just south of Indian Trail, and is identified as map 66, lot 71. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.557 acres.
Just started.
Mr. Chairman, the application has made its way to the agenda this evening. Starting the process of the review, it is for, as you noted, residential addition, walls, a modified driveway opening, and other related features. Lies within the regulatory setback to the brook and perhaps wetlands on the adjoining property. Starting this evening, acknowledge receipt, start the statutory time clock, determine if a public hearing is warranted, and solicit any preliminary comments you may have about the application. Staff has reviewed, has been to the site, and will be generating a list of information necessary to move forward with the application.
Any of the commissioners have any questions or comments on 17 Searles?
I'm almost inclined to have this as a agent approval also, but that's just my opinion. But I do have one request, Rick. You could ask them if they have records of their septic system being maintained. It's in a very dicey area, and we've got to start doing a little bit more of that, I think.
Anybody else?
Did you have something?
No.
I had one question. So the driveway is gravel, then it seems like they counted that as the impervious surface. Do we typically count gravel driveways as impervious?
Usually,
Because they're going to be replacing it with asphalt.
So, in some circumstances, engineering firms seek to have it considered to be pervious.
Mm-hmm.
Most reviewing agencies, I would say, consider it to be impervious
Mhm.
because it compacts to
Right.
relatively the same degree.
But it slows runoff down more than asphalt would.
Yeah, I mean, as a pathway for drainage, yes, perhaps, because it's how it comes. But don't forget that our peer review is going to be reviewing it in conformance with the drainage manual as it currently stands.
Right. And then the only other thing is, they say that there's no planting plan because it's actually a decrease in impervious surface. But since some of the water overflows into the road and across into the water course, I mean, wouldn't it be kind of a nice thing, and don't we kind of typically ask them to do a little something?
Well, I mean, as far as a planting plan.
I mean, it's
you'd
not
have to-
required,
You'd
but-
have to have, I mean, you really want to make it purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we go out in our next inspection and find something that would really truly be purposeful, it's very difficult to be a buffer to the watercourse on the other side of the road.
Right, because it's the
Heavily
road.
vegetated. On the, on one side, I think there's a little patch of wetland as well
Mm.
that is, again, across driveways. So we could find something that, if we can make it purposeful, I think we can ask. So-
Okay, that's all I really had.
So, Bill raised, what's the feeling of the commission? Should this be an agent approval?
I'm borderline on it, so I
Okay.
would like,
Mike, Peter?
I'm agnostic.
Yeah, same with me also.
Same. I could go either way.
We'll make a determination.
Pardon?
We'll make a
Okay,
determination as we go
as
through.
we get into it, okay.
Yep.
Starting old business, EPC 05-2025 PL 25-17, 10 Stony Brook Road, Darien Holdings LLC, to modify a driveway, construct a parking court, install drainage, utilities, and other related features within close proximity to the wetlands and water courses. The property lies along the east side of Stony Brook Road, approximately 370 feet north of West Avenue, and it's identified as map 70, lot 50 of 43. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.37 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the agenda summary report, and I just wanted to just add here initially that I sent you also a revision just with some minor date changes that were in here. So we have agenda summary report dated July 2nd, but it was revised July 8th, just to update two of the plans and to the dates of the reports by Joe Canis. I think as we started to talk about this in the prior months, there's ongoing construction on the property. The applicant initially submitted plans that utilize the existing driveway opening and has come up with, and had a plan that confined all the activity more than 50 feet away from wetlands and watercourses. This property was previously developed. There was a small dwelling on it. It was demolished. They initiated the construction some time back, did the grading, and the house is well underway in terms of construction. There will also be a pool. There's also drainage systems, all that had been previously approved. As we moved into the development process, the applicants decided that there'd be additional activities that are in fact regulated that involve the driveway opening, the pipe under the driveway, some of the grading and management of the space that is along actually Stony Brook Road. And as noted in the agenda summary report, there are, in terms of characteristics of the property, goes from gently to severely sloping developed lands that were associated with the prior development, many rock outcroppings, the wetlands at the rear of the property, which is I guess it's the east, is the primary area of wetland. It has a perennial watercourse and a very broad wooded kind of deciduous wetland associated with it. The activities that we're focusing on, because that will be maintained the full 50 feet, and they've been in good and maintaining the silt fence in that space and holding the 50 feet.
Plus, we
to
can't
that.
really get back there because it's an active construction site.
Well, if you're challenged and you want to climb up over the back, you can do that. But most of the activities here are now along Stony Brook Road. There's a narrow drainage way along the road. In fact, the old driveway passes over it, and there's a pipe or remnants of a pipe under that driveway. There's a very narrow wetland fringe that's along that water course. Mm-hmm. And so the activities that are associated with this particular application involve the western reaches of the site. It's not in the flood hazard zone. There was a soils report that was completed for the property. The applicant was tasked with the with the requirements to assess potential impacts on not only the wetlands and water courses, but areas of resources. They're looking at, and we'll review as part of this as well, drainage impact, water quality impacts, and the value of certain mitigation measures that have been proposed to offset potential impacts on resources, to displace manicured lawn, and to enhance the overall conservation values of the property. Even more so, improve the aesthetics and the approach to the dwelling. The applicant has provided a site development plan. There's no direct wetland or watercourse encroachments as a result of these activities. About 914 square feet of the upland review area, again in the western reaches of the site, are expected to be either temporarily or permanently affected by the development. In terms of encroachments, and again, it is for a driveway modification and a parking court and the addition of drainage and some grading and other improvements. The major components, like the parking court's about 31 feet away from the edge of the wetlands and water courses. Grading is about 25 feet away. There's not expected to be a tremendous amount of grade change in the area, about a foot. However, there are some trees along the property, and 6 of those trees are going to be removed. We asked the applicant to secure the services of an arborist to evaluate them because of their, a lot of them were in decline or dead or in declining. And as part of the application, you have an arborist report that gives a good assessment of the trees, that many of them are in fact hazardous, and that they are currently being proposed to be removed and mitigated with a planting enhancement plan. The drainage, just for the record, basically is a ridge line in the middle of this property. The eastern side drains to the perennial watercourse in the wetlands in the back. The eastern portion under the existing condition to the street and the swale. The increase in imperviousness as a result of redevelopment. There was the need for doing drainage mitigation in the form of infiltration. Soils were tested, perk rates were provided, a plan was developed, and as a result, the project engineer was able to establish that by taking the driveways and the roofs of the new and the pool area, put into the infiltrators that for storms from the most basic 1 to 50 years in frequency, no adverse impact on drainage and adjoining properties. They've also maintained the water quality volume for the development, and again, they also did it more conservatively with the fresh meadow, and they had a basic operations and maintenance plan. So no adverse impacts, and it's been verified by the town's peer reviewer in terms of not only impact and methodology, but also the design that's been proposed. One part of it also is related to drainage. There's a pipe that's currently under the drive. The applicant is, through this process, has now determined, in order to get better, more positive flows in that channel, to do a few things. And one is to replace that pipe. So the plan now provides for the pipe replacement, rip-wrapping the ends, evaluating the channel to make sure that there's positive flow in that channel, and across the, working with DPW to make sure that there's a free and unobstructed flow. And water quality, basic sediment erosion control plan. This house is being reconnected to the sanitary sewer. All the structures have deep sumps and outlet controls in order to assist in the removal of sediments. A planting plan has been devised, and I just want to make sure that you had the most up-to-date one. It was dated like, I think, July 1st.
Ago, yeah.
And it includes introduction of numerous trees, shrubs, and native ground covers. has demarcation features associated with it, and they've also added about the removal of non-native invasives by hand, and,
We have two.
yeah, you do it one hand, you can remove it only with one hand, and the prohibition on synthetics for deer graze, and the application of some of the preferred organic land use and lawn practices. I'm available to answer questions. Brian Carey is here from Land Tech, who was also the arborist that authored the report on the assessment of the trees. So I'm sure he'll have a presentation. I can answer any questions you may have.
You did my job. Thank you, Rick. I mean, I had something prepared, but he basically,
Sir, would you please identify
Yeah,
yourself?
so-
And so for the record?
for the record, I'm Brian Carey, Director of Environmental Science Services with Land Tech, with offices in Westport. I'm also a professional wetland scientist and a licensed Connecticut arborist and a certified ecologist. Mr. Talamelli went through this. I'm pitch hitting for Andy Salmolides, who was here last time, who's on vacation. But as discussed, they did update the permit plan, which required us to submit a full permit to the commission. Land Tech did go out and provide, completed a soil scientist delineation, wetland delineation of the property, and did find 3 distinct units. The front of the property, they was talking about what the pipe actually kind of functions as an open sewer right now. Road drainage does go in there, so that is, that will actually help the town, because this is a slack water area, because of the condition of this pipe. I did go out, I did get a call about going out and looking at the condition of the trees. Most of them are scrubby white pines and red maple. They are impacting, they do have, there are basically impacts to the existing utility lines. Some of those trees appear to be in the right of way. So if the town tree warden would have to look at them before they were removed. But most of them are covered in vines, and there's just not a lot to save there. As discussed, there's a full planting plan. Drainage improvements, again, we have a system of 330 HD rated. They're actually 36 Coltex 300 HD galleries that will be put into the ground that collects all of the drainage from the proposed parking court off the roof lines and all of the impervious. That is compliant with the town of Darayen's stormwater management manual. It was reviewed by Joe Canis of Ty and Bond. We did receive his report. There was a couple corrections he wanted. We had the normal back and forth. We answered all of his questions. We did receive staff's report yesterday, went through it, take no exception to anything that's been written. We did try our best to mitigate all the potential impacts to wetlands by maintaining as much of the project outside of the 50-foot upland review area. This really is a no disturbance area in the back of the property, as you can see by the planting plan, which really just keeps the initial tree cover intact, which will continue to provide radiational cooling for the adjacent perennial stream. Again, this is the area where the trees are being removed. That is being mitigated by additional native plantings that will, again, provide buffer to the existing wetland. There is actually a stone demarcation that will prevent any encroachment into the wetland by future landscape maintenance. Again, the site is serviced by city water and sewer, so there is no septic system or possibility of a failing septic system in the future that may cause impairment to the adjacent wetlands. I talked about the vegetated buffer. We talked about the tree removal. Basically, the entire project as designed with input from staff really meets or exceeds the town of Darayen's EPC regulations, Connecticut DEP water quality standards, and really best management practices associated with construction practices for stormwater, but also habitat protection. As you saw, I think the biggest thing to note is that this non-disturbance area will remain. So that is a benefit. And I have been out to the site during construction, and everything is being maintained with silt fence, and the job site currently is in good condition. So if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. One last thing though is the site is still way under maximum building coverage allowable, which is 20%. It's at 9.8%. So they could go bigger if they didn't, trying to maintain the existing buffers and setbacks to wetlands.
It's a great piece of natural floodplain back there, and it's wonderful that you're not infringing on it. It's excellent. You already have large boulders there, and I think those should be formalized to put on that whole area in the back. It's nice that you put them there, but I don't see them on any of the plans. That'll keep the lawn creep from occurring for the next people who are down the line. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so along this line, I
Yeah.
don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, it'd be good if they're formalized. It look like they're already there. They're large. They can't be moved well, and just keep them there would be excellent. And then that area will just remain natural. I appreciate you keeping it that way.
Whatever's reflected in the record, we'll update with staff and add that to the plans.
Great, thanks.
I actually have a question regarding demarcation, which
Go for it.
traditionally, I think a boulder demarcation does make sense
Okay.
in this application.
Okay.
But per your landscaping plan, you made a note in the general notes, number 10. It says that the boulder demarcation row shall be composed of 2 manned boulders, 2 cubic feet or larger, spaced at a maximum of 10 foot on center. And my question to you is, because I did the math, can you just show the commission approximately how large a 2 cubic foot boulder?
So the idea of this gets asked a lot. A two-man boulder is something that 2 men could barely pick up.
So
It's
show
not-
me-
it's
show
not
me,
really a
like,
scientific term.
What would be a
It
2
would
cubic
basically
foot boulder?
Basically be, without this far if you laid it over. The idea is to keep the space, so the normal mower is about 36 to 64 inches for
So
a
less than
zero
12
turn.
inches, so if I made a rectangle 12 inches square, that's greater than 2 cubic feet, correct?
So normally when we do that, I go literally to the quarry and I mark the rocks
So
with a.
show us,
with a
how,
36
what is the
inch.
volume of a 2 cubic boulder?
I mean, it's.
Or the math, what's the
probably-
width, the depth, and the
I
height?
mean, really, there is no math
So it's
associated
only
with
the-
it. It's.
Well, yeah, of
it's
course, because you know the cubic feet of the volume of the rock.
I take a.
It's this
I-
big,
I
it's
take
tiny.
I take a measuring tape and I go out and measure that and say, could I pick that up by myself? 2 people. The idea is that you don't want the landscaper coming out there when he's mowing the lawn to throw the boulder out of the way, to get in there to mow it and then put the boulder back. So it's something that is substantial enough that needs to be placed there by a machine. And the width of it will not allow for a single zero-turn type mower to get in there.
A 2 foot cubic rock requires a machine to place it?
I don't place those by hand, no. With 2 people, I would generally put them onto the front of a skid steer and move it.
Could you pick up a 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot rock?
No.
Is that equal to or greater than 2 cubic feet?
Well, it depends on the density of the rock.
Yeah,
okay?
yes,
But,
yeah.
Well, if it's almost, I can lift it,
We're not
okay?
comparing feathers to, Rick, here's what I'm getting at, is we're talking man-sized boulders, right? We're
Well,
talking clear.
let me clarify. In the
Demarcation.
back, in the eastern side, those are monster boulders. You would not lift those. But now I think you're talking about in the front. That's
Well,
a different story.
But this landscaping plan isn't specifying specifically.
No, but if he doesn't move the ones in the back, then
Oh,
This
no,
is
I'm trying to get our
also,
engineer,
before we receive a
landscaper
CO, I
consultant.
mean, there are projects where, you go out there and you see the people trying to cheat. Rick does have to come out there and inspect it. and look at it and say, hey, guys, that's not what we're talking
So,
about.
Rick,
by the
I don't
plan."
think a two-man boulder is a scientific specification on plan. I think the architects and the engineers actually specify the approximate dimension of said boulder. And I would think something that's like 36 inches square would be an appropriate size that a machine would easily be able to place, and one for the perpetuity of the property and the plan would always know that that's the demarcation. My second question I have, which I think I kind of take issue with, is the demarcation on the, I'm looking at, you know, you get bit by the mosquito when you look at these things. We look at these plans all the time, and then you see the applicant make a specification of specifically what we're gonna do to demarcate a wetland, and you start to think about it. And in this example is I'm looking for the compass orientation. So to the northwest of the, well, no, I'm specifically, because it's not on the northeast, it's only demarcated on the northwest of the plan. We'll get to your part 3 here. Is on the northwest part of the property, you show that the boulder demarcation is on the wetland, correct? Your dotted line is the wetland line. It's not an upland review area line.
Correct.
So why is it that the boulder has to be on the wetland line? Why wouldn't we give some buffer off of that wetland line?
Yeah, it's a good point.
I don't think
Because
it's
the upland review
appropriate.
area the upland review area is running through the parking court.
Yeah, well,
So-
I understand that, but
But
we see these applications all the time, and you're a consultant, and we're commissioners, and we know what happens is I want that boulder to be, let's say, 10 feet off the wetland line. That way that there's no creep of the lawn into the wetland. Your planting buffer isn't proud of the boulders, which I would also argue that the planting plan should be proud of the boulders. So you have a soft screening, proud of the actual hard wetland line, and in between the soft screening and the actual wetland is the boulder, not the lawn to the boulder, and then right behind the boulder is the wetland.
So in this case, that is exactly what's happening. You have the wetland line.
No,
is
look
over
up,
here.
no, look
You're
up,
talking
your
about here in particular.
northwest,
Yep,
you
here.
have you have your wetland line on your
Correct.
application, and you have the boulder right on the wetland line.
Yeah.
And all of your landscaping is behind the wetland line.
These are obligate landscape plants that are meant to mitigate any tree removal that's occurring in the actual wetland. This area was previously lawn. I didn't put together this particular plan. This was done by Matt Pop, who I have utmost respect for.
Well, Matt's here, you can stand up.
Yeah, this was existing lawn. They're mitigating the impacts to wetlands. We're keeping this as far out of wetland
How
as
is the
possible.
lawn, wait, how is the lawn being mitigated by the demarcation? It looks like on your landscaping
This is
plan
existing.
that the lawn runs
This
right
was
into the boulder.
existing lawn. This was existing. So now we're putting in mitigation plants, adding additional trees, and keeping the lawn the way it was existing. I mean, this is a big mitigation. This is a very, I would say, low-functioning wetland. This is basically an open sewer along the front of the road. I think, basically what they're proposing for mitigation along this area, again, giving, setback.
You're going in circles here.
No, I'm just trying to answer your
So if you look at the
questions.
northwest corner of the property, which I'm specifically citing to, you have demarcated on your plan, and if you're not the engineer to talk about the landscaping plan, then maybe the landscape architect can discuss that, is you have the wetland line demarcated on the plan.
That is
And then
generally what you do.
And you have I'm sorry?
That is generally what you do, is demarcate the wetland line on the property.
I'm not arguing that point at all. You've shown it. You've brought to our attention where the wetland is. Then you've put the so-called two-man boulders on the wetland line.
Correct.
You provided no space between the actual wetland and the lawn area. And I don't see on this plan hold on. I don't see on this plan at all, someone correct me, I don't see any buffer between the lawn and the wetland. I see a boulder right on the wetland. So what I am suggesting to you is back the boulder off the wetland line, put a buffer between the lawn area and the boulder, and the wetlands in perpetuity are protected. I don't see why that's complicated.
I understand your point. This is what was proposed. I think it mitigates.
We're trying to keep sheet flow off the lawns
Yeah.
from going right in there, and at this point, it's gonna go right in there.
But the sheet flow from the proposed parking area is being directed to the stormwater
The lawn,
detention
oh,
area.
the lawn?
No, the Coltex.
I think the,
Yeah, Matt.
I think the,
Yeah, the wetland is currently lawn. I mean, that's what I was pointing to. This whole area is currently lawn. This entire area in the front of the property is lawn up to, there's a stone wall here, and that's where you have the tree line that, you know, is sporadically has dying pine and the vines coming through there. It's an improvement over the existing condition.
Is there a problem expanding it? Some de minimis amount that you have?
I would rather get rid of the driveway and not do it and keep the lawn, then I don't have to come back here. I mean, we have to talk about aesthetics too.
Excuse me, would you mind getting up here, please?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Please identify yourself for the record.
My name's Sean Shea. I'm the owner of the property. First of all, a boulder's like this size. There's a whole bunch of them we saved just for this purpose. Second of all, it's all lawn. I'm really looking for a parking area to park a couple cars in the front of the property. All those trees on that side are staying. The only trees we're taking down basically is what has already been removed and the ones in the front. If I took one of the original wetland plants, soil scientist plans, that property wasn't even marked as wetlands. It was only the left side. So I had a soil scientist come anyway, and it's only because it's wetland where the grass is because it flooded because the pipes don't work. And we all know about the pipes and ditches and all that stuff. But you have to look at it this way. You can't, the bushes are a demarcation. The boulders, and all you want to do is keep pushing the envelope towards what looks nice. There's no frogs in this area. There's not even deer in this area. I understand what you're trying to do, take more property, but I would rather withdraw this thing and not have the parking spot in the front than keep pushing my front yard towards the house. It's gotta look nice. It has to look nice, and that's what this plan does. It puts a whole shitload more bushes and trees in that area over grass that's been mowed for years. That's what it's like. So to keep pushing rocks forward to demarcate what? It's not even substantial wetlands. It's just the moisture science, the soil that's from the flooding of the ditch. That's all it is. I don't mean to go off. I just don't want to spend another year here with, like I did Old Kings Highway. Sorry. Just get, a boulder is a boulder.
Well, no, okay.
Nobody's gonna lift that
We're
thing
very
up.
binary. You mentioned some things, so let's talk about it.
Okay.
You get your money's worth, right?
I'm trying to.
So one
This is cut and dry to me.
So
This
one
is like no brainer.
You're a pro. Like this is like, hey guys, like 1, 2, 3, right?
Right.
One is they said we're gonna have a 2-man boulder so you can't pick it up.
Right.
And they said a 2-man boulder is 2 cubic feet. You're a stronger man than I am, and we can move 2 cubic foot rocks.
You won't be
Just
able to
kidding.
move these with 3
So
people.
have them specify, look, we're holding the engineers to their attention to detail, right? So have them specify 36 inches square, something approximation of that.
Does it really matter if you're gonna have
Yeah,
Rick go
it
out there with
does.
36?
Sean, you've
He's
been
not
building-
he gets his money too.
You've been
He goes
building-
out there and he goes and says, yeah, that's a boulder. Don't think any landscaper's gonna lift that. And even 2 of them, maybe 3 Guatemalans won't even lift that one. So he counts
Oh,
them.
come on, let's watch what we say here.
Okay, but
We're
the
in-
point is, A boulder's a boulder.
So-
And you're gonna go with semantics by having measure, what if one's 35 inches, we're gonna take it out and put another one in?
We don't want people moving the boulders. We
There's
don't-
no way
Hold
Rick's
on a
gonna let
second.
us do.
Okay, so Rick is gonna work that out. That's germane to me. I pointed out something they brought up, and I think we agree on that. So that's number one. Number two is, you know you've been here enough times for yourself and for applicants. You were just here for Old Kings Highway.
For a year.
This is carbon copy of what we're talking about, is we don't want you planting dead nuts, a lawn, up into the wetlands. So you can't just say, the wetland is right here, and I'm gonna put a rock right here, and then this lawn isn't going to be part of this wetland. So there's gotta be a reasonable boundary of that. No one's trying to make your life difficult. Number three, you made a point, which everybody comes to the commission to argue, and says, oh, a wetland, the soil scientists went into a wetland area, and they designated the soils to be wet. And people will say, oh, well, there was drainage there, and that made the spot wet. Or there's sheet flow to that area, and that has made that area wet. Or there's a vernal pool there, and it has made it wet. The fact of the matter is that the conditions of the site have made that a wetland. If it's a wetland, it's a wetland. We're not
To me, there's
we're not
swamps and then there's
trivializing
wetlands.
the fact that there's a wetland.
This is a lawn. That's a lawn. That's a wetland. So by pushing it forward and encroaching, we're not encroaching on the wetland per se. You're trying to have me encroach on the house. And that's, there's gotta be a compromise
There
here.
is no adverse impact. This is lawn. You're mitigating the existing impact.
Well, that's your responsibility. So look,
No,
you
and
can't.
what you're saying about extending the lawn, about what he is gonna do is speculative. And the law is very clear about having speculative to say, I don't think this is gonna work. That's what's on the plan. That's what we said we're gonna do. To speculate that he's not gonna do that is not the law. That's what we're saying we're gonna do. That's why you have a staff to ensure that it gets done, so that when we come up here and we say, we're gonna build this drainage system, and we don't do it, that is, we're guaranteeing we're gonna build that, because he's gonna make sure that we build that through a CO process. For you to say that we're gonna do that, and all of a sudden, we're gonna be in there putting in lawn, that's a speculative argument, and that is not how the.
Sir, what you're saying is nothing I've said whatsoever.
Yes,
I don't know
it is.
if you're listening to the words that are coming out of my mouth. I'm really confused because what you just said has absolutely nothing to do with what I just
You
mentioned to
said you
you.
want the rocks there, and I'm not gonna, you said you want the rocks there because he's going to encroach in there and put lawn in there.
No,
We're
excuse
showing
me,
you how
hold
we're-
on. I didn't say that at all. Did not say that at all. I'll repeat myself. Is generally speaking, the way we look at this is we look for a hardscape demarcation to prevent any lawn area encroaching into the wetland. And what you have provided on plan was a rock that a human being could pick up
No.
with the representation that it would be immovable without two people. And I asked you what the dimension of that would be, and anybody in this room, please correct me.
It's not
on
a
the size
scientific
of a
basis.
two-
Any
On the size of
landscape-
I'm speaking, on a size of a 2 cubic foot rock. The second piece that I was mentioning is that I would like to see a buffer between the lawn into a soft landscape, then an actual hard demarcation. Not the demarcation directly on the wetland. We have seen many applications to this commission in the past several weeks where all applicants have said, yes, we are in close proximity to the wetland, and they have done their best to pull all of the hard demarcation reasonably away from the actual wetland in the upland review area, not on the wetland. So I asked a very germane question.
So that, I'll answer that question. The applicant is here. He has stated that he is not willing to do that. There is no adverse impact to this wetland. They are restoring it. The applicant has said he's not willing to do that. If he's made to do that, he will withdraw this application. That is what he has said. I cannot offer something that the applicant isn't willing to give. So I think that is basically, the record shows through all of the information that's in the record, that all of the adverse impacts have been mitigated, all of the short-term adverse impacts have been mitigated. There are no long-term adverse impacts that are associated with this project. And we believe that the way it's been designed is a net benefit to the site. Everything in the record, it basically holds that, and to argue over the minutia of a two-man boulder, which is a landscape term. I mean, that didn't just come out of, we can argue what that means. The reason why they use boulders like that is because it's a more natural thing. We could go out there and get concrete block and put that on the ground. It would serve the similar function, but it's an aesthetic thing. Again, there's a backstop to make sure that what we are planning to do and what is being proposed is basically upheld by staff.
Rick, maybe you can work this through later too, because
I
think we're
think-
missing, I'm listening to this, and I think some people are missing what we're trying to do here.
I
So
think it's,
maybe you can work that through.
given all the benefits of what's being proposed and what the requirements of the commission and are typically applied, I think the reasonable thing to do is have some de minimis expansion of that buffer to the wetland and move the boulders back. I mean, I always make sure that the boulders are weighty enough that they aren't easily moved. And I absolutely hate with these demarcation features when it's a line of boulders and it looks like a line of boulders, like soldiers lined up. It's something that you put out there that it's supposed to be visual demarcation, not, in my opinion, not necessarily a wall or a physical demarcation. It has to be weighty enough that it's going to be, I think embedding the boulder is more effective than getting fixated on the size of the boulder. Is embed the boulder, work the plantings in between. You have some buffer to the wetland, albeit that it is already lawn, and then you still have some ability to filter and do all the things that buffers do before it gets into the wetland. I think this is, I would hate to see this go down the tubes,
Yeah.
withdrawn over some de minimis increase in the size of a buffer along the front of the building. Too much work went into this.
What percentage of the parking court is in the upland review area?
I mean, this is probably about half.
So I'm going to make a request, which, given most people in Darien, this would be an easy ask. Is there a way we can restrict oil changes for any automobiles that might be stored or maintained on that parking court?
I mean, I think that's a reasonable request.
Okay. Most people
Yeah.
in Darien probably don't
I have
change
to-
their own oil.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when's the last time you saw somebody
I have to think-
changing their own oil?
speak up on
Maybe
that.
Michael, no.
That's completely unenforceable
Yeah.
for somebody who's done it for it. I mean, you're gonna have the oil change police go around and see if they're changing, it's not gonna
Well, I
happen.
think it's as a condition for the permit.
Yes, but yeah, no, I get it, but how reasonable is that? And, we're not gonna
It's
task the Darien police to go around and, are you changing your oil? And, let me say, no, you can do it here, but you can't do it here.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's,
It's just not practical.
yeah, the way I kind of think of it is, we got a parking court in the upland review area, and I don't think we can prevent normal oil runoff, but, and I don't think too many people would be changing their oil anyway.
Well, to your point, we
Not to
just had
that.
an application where we asked for demarcation to mitigate parking encroaching into the wetland. So your thought process is not wrong.
I mean, it's probably unenforceable, I agree, but it's a request.
A maintenance.
Throw it in there, I don't care. Throw it
It-
out, knock yourself out.
It's impossible.
Certain towns have that as standard conditions too. oil changes, and
Certain towns what?
they have it as standard condition in some of their permits.
All right.
So then it's not an unreasonable request, is it?
No, it's just as Rick said,
It's not enforceable,
it's hard to enforce.
but
Well, everything's hard to enforce. That's why we like to have demarcated boundaries, because once the project is completed, it's hard to go back. Right?
Yeah. That's why they have the demarcated boundaries right here.
But to Rick's point, when we said
Sean, can you
boulders,
step up to the podium so I can catch you, please? Thank you.
to Rick's point, when we said boulders, I just don't like to plop boulders in the front yard. We set them, they kind of go, so a boulder could be 5 feet wide and maybe 2 feet is sticking out of the ground. Because we want it to look, like it's part of the project, part of natural look with the planning around it. That's how I did it. Rick's seen how I've done it before. It's got to look natural. So to lift, if 36 inches is sticking out of the ground, there's probably another 36 in the ground. You'd have to dig around it to get it. You've seen those boulders there. I have to get rid of them. This is a good place for me to get rid of them. And they're way bigger than 36 inches.
Sean, I think we agree, right?
Good.
But what you do is you hire these guys, and they actually put words on a plan, and the words on the plan aren't matching with what you're talking about. So what are we gonna do? We're gonna ask you the question, which is what we're doing. So Rick is gonna work through that with you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Carolyn?
Oh, just a couple things. I thought you did a nice job organizing the planting plan, indicating that things are true natives, no for preferred landscaping practices, and so forth. It also specifies a follow-up invasives for 2 years, and that's good. I think that's good, but we know that invasives, even when you're really very careful about following them for 2 years, they come back. And so I'm wondering if there's some, maybe kind of similar to what Peter asked with some guidelines that might be given to the owner going, so that going forward, they know what you've been doing, why you've been doing it, and what they can do going forward to keep the invasives away. Like, maybe give them some pamphlets or, some literature on what you've been doing and why.
Well, there is an invasive species control plan. Generally, that comes with the annual report that has to be submitted to the town as part of the bond release process.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. And then my other question is on the tree risk assessment report. There are 6 trees in the front that are being removed, and those are, most of them are in the wetlands.
They're along the street. Yeah, the wetland meanders a little bit here.
Right.
Most of them are in the wetland.
So I noticed that it also recommends that the stumps should be ground and soils restored to allow for future stabilization and replanting. Do the stumps, a lot of times in wetlands, we ask people to just cut them kind of
Flush
flush.
cut 'em. Yeah, I mean, we can do that. That's not a
Because
problem.
when we say it's okay to grind,
Yep.
stump, the whole ground gets,
Exactly.
and it causes more problems than,
That's not a problem.
okay, so they would just be like flush cut. And then
yep.
they eventually just
Rot in
decay.
place, yep.
So.
Yeah, the tree warden has to look at that as well, too.
Right. That's all that I had.
Trevor?
Yeah, for me, look, I think that the impact to the wetland area is minimal at best. I drive past this area on a daily basis as I take my girls to daycare. I think the plan is going to be a huge improvement based on what exists there now. I know we're getting hung up on the rock demarcation and the weight of the rocks. Can we put like a minimum weight on it if that makes the commission comfortable?
Well, why don't we just leave it to Rick?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
just leave it to
Exactly.
Rick, because I think that,
Yeah.
We
you know,
trust Rick.
Yeah, I think that should be.
we're not professionals
Yeah,
in rocks.
exactly.
So, and weight of rocks, et cetera, so, obviously, Sean, you have a good experience in this, and Rick does, you know, and then you can come back to the commission.
I
and
think
say-
burying them probably causes more soil disturbance than we want, so I think we just put a couple big rocks where you have it located, and if Rick decides that they are suitable and immovable by two men, I have no other questions.
Okay. Personally, I think this is a good improvement as to what's existing, and so I don't think there's going to, in my personal opinion, I don't think there's going to be any long-term significant damage to the wetlands or water courses here. I think that, you know, to clean up the trees in the front, I think, you know, whether they're flush cut or not, you know, I'm not the expert. I'll leave that to the experts as to what's the best way to do that. You and the tree warden, I'm okay with that. As the size of the rocks, no. I'm just not going to get into it because I think Rick and Sean can deal with that offline. So, so as far as I'm concerned, you know, it certainly meets the criteria of this commission.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
No.
Great. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay. Next item, EPC 1125, 2025 PL 2556, 160 near Water Lane, E. Maxwell, to demolish an existing structure and construct a single-family dwelling, driveway, drainage, in-ground pool, and other related features in a special flood hazard area and proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the east side of near Water Lane, approximately 300 feet north of Shipway Road, and is identified as map number 57, lot 26. The zone is RNBD, and it is approximately 0.32 acres.
Chairman, over the past several months, the EPC considered this application to construct a new single-family dwelling in a flood-prone area along with attendant facilities. Important information relative to resource impact, drainage, water quality, and the suitability of the mitigations proposed was gathered at the April and June meetings of the commission. At the last meeting, upon the completion of testimony, the commission directed me to formulate a draft resolution for your consideration, and you will note in the conditions of this draft that I tried to be at least cognizant of some of the areas of concerns or where improvements needed to be made as a condition of the approval. Again, recognizing it's a flood-prone dwelling, that the impact analysis seems very reasonable. There'll have to be improvements. You know, we get draft elements in the floodproofing that will be applied to them. Of course, we get down to the minutiae, we get down to these very detailed elements that still there's improvements to be made. So that'll all come in advance of, as they go through the plan and zoning process in advance of a building permit. And we go back and we look at it and make sure all those elements are addressed as part of the flood-prone area regulations. We're also recommending some improvements to the flood contingency plan, some improvements to the landscaping plan, where there wasn't a ton of detail on the ornamental elements of it, and then some improvements to the both the erosion control and the drainage and operations plan. I am available to answer any questions on the draft resolution. B?
Does any commission members have questions or comments on the resolution?
No.
No? No? Okay. Your turn.
Okay, I make a motion to approve EPC 11-2025, 160 near Water Lane, to demolish an existing structure and construct a new single-family dwelling, driveway, drainage, in-ground pool, and other related features in a special flood hazard area and proximate to wetlands and watercourses.
And I'll second that motion related to EPC 11-2025.
All in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Next, next item of business is EPC 12-2025, PL 25-72. 49 Salisbury Road, Glowcon Studios LLC to replace septic tank, install air handlers, renovate lawn areas, remove vegetation, and conduct other related activities in and proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the north side of Salisbury Road, approximately 740 feet west of Brookside Road, and is identified as map number 01, lot number 105. The zone is R2, and it is approximately 1.00 acres.
Chairman, this is only on to acknowledge the receipt of an extension in order to develop the information that this commission requested in order to review the application. There's no action that's necessary.
Okay. Moving on. EPC 13-2025, PL 25-7525, Old Kings Highway North, UB Darien LLC to construct an electric charging station, including superchargers, charging posts, switchgear, transformer platform, and other related features in a special flood hazard area and proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the property which is currently supports the Goodwife Shopping Center. Should we say Goodwife Shopping Center or Regency
Right,
Center?
it's, yeah.
It's King's
Oh,
Market.
King's Market, right.
A King
Heinz
Market?
Highway Market.
Okay. Lies along the east side of Old Kings Highway North, approximately 550 feet south of Brookside Road, and is identified as map number 71, lot number 19. The zone is DC, and it is approximately 9.49 acres.
Chairman, I'll give just a brief summary of the application. For those that were on the commission over the last year or two, this application for this charging station on this property was before the commission previously. Got down to pretty close to the end of our review process. And then it was determined that a key element of it required a variance, the elevated platform. And so the application ran out of time. The application was ultimately withdrawn. The applicant went to the ZBA and secured a variance for the elevated platform. So the application itself is in the shopping center, is for some number of charging stations, all the attendant facilities, the transformers, the switchgear will be placed on, I believe it's the northern perimeter. A lot of that is driven by where it goes. It's driven by the availability of utilities and the proper spatial kind of considerations. It consists of the charging stations, and then there's underground services, a platform in the back, elevated more than a foot above the base flood, that has the important electrical components, the switchgear and the transformers. So, and the reason why that's being done is that the property is within the base floodplain of the river. And I just printed out from the GIS how extensive that floodplain is. The blue is the floodplain and the floodway that's on this piece of property.
Well, we saw it.
So you saw it during
A couple of years ago.
a couple of years ago how extensive the floodplain is. So the review, just for where the wetlands are as well, is that the property is, has commercially developed, it has a parking spaces, it has a reach of the Goodwives River on it. It has a very de minimis kind of fringe wetland along the channel, which is very abrupt. There are wetlands in the back in the extreme eastern reaches, just off the property, up against Interstate 95. And through our process with a soil scientist, there's a little pocket, didn't even call it wetland, he called it intermittent watercourse, a ponding area that lies pretty close to where in the lawn and unpaved spaces on the property, just to the north of where the charging stations will go. As I said, the entire property is in the flood zone, and it was previously approved. The task for the applicant is to demonstrate absence of impact on wetlands and watercourses, water quality, drainage impact, compliance with the flood regulations in terms of not changing or not adversely impacting the flood in terms of rise or change in the dynamics of the flood, and to flood-proof these elements in a manner that is generally consistent with the regulations. So just a few facts on this. Most of the construction will be confined to existing paved parking area in the adjoining lawn in the shoulder to the parking area. Grade change is virtually none associated with it. No significantly sized individual or groups of trees will be impacted. The encroachments are about 900 to 1,000 square feet of the upland review area, temporary or permanent, and about 1,400 square feet of the floodplain shall be affected. The setbacks, it's more than 200 feet to the river, 260 feet or more. It's maybe 4 or 5 feet to this little pocket of intermittent ponding that's on the property well. The project engineer has certified the absence of flood rise and changes to the dynamics of the flood. We'll get into that a little bit more. The charging stations lie below, in part, within in the floodplain. Their base is around elevation 45. The base flood's like 48 and change. But the applicant has and will provide to you tonight their investigation into these charging stations. With most of the guts are limited to the top portions of it. So there's approximately 40 inches of freeboard built into these. And it's a balancing act of raising these elements versus accessibility for when the cars need to be charged. The whole system is equipped with a shunt trip device. Gets wet, shuts the whole system down. The electrical equipment, again, the important components are going to be that elevated steel platform open underneath, and that was done specifically to kind of reduce the flood impacts as well. But it's elevated above, watertight below. The watertight systems below, they meet the standard. The ZBA required a screening fence to this elevated platform. That's been certified as being floodproof. And there are some minor de minimis kind of additional floodproofing requirements that have to be addressed in advance of a building permit, including using the specific language that is relevant to the flood regulations. Applicant has further determined no adverse impact on drainage in the adjoining property. Basically, working in pavement will be restored to structure or pavement. Erosion control plan has been provided. They have a contingency for flooding, for flood purposes on the working during the process of the install. And they have it's a very basic mitigation plan. They are providing some protection for some nearby low-growing vegetation. And they have come up with a planting plan for this little pocket. It probably could use some additional detail and some alternative plant selections and notation of the sizings that would make enforcement of it an easier thing than some of what's being shown in the plan. I'm available to answer questions. The project engineer is here, and we'll go from there.
Sir, please identify yourself.
Sure. For the record, Ted Crawford with Dewberry Engineers, licensed professional.
Just out of curiosity, sorry for interrupting
Yeah, no, go ahead.
your spiel, but I'd just like to know, does Dewberry do, where are you out of? Where's your office?
We have offices in Boston and Parsippany, New Jersey. I actually live in Connecticut, so I'm the Connecticut engineer. With the resources of those offices, I work directly for most of the Connecticut projects.
Do you specifically do this?
Yeah.
Charging is that your
That's
main
primarily
thing?
My scope of work with them are the EV charging stations and some telecom work, cell towers and things like that. So it's just, I happen to be a local resource within Connecticut, so it works out well. So I cover most of Connecticut and Northeast for the electric charging stations for Tesla, as well as other companies that do the same thing.
Thank you, I just wanted to establish
Yeah,
your
no
expertise
problem.
in the area. No.
Yeah, no, I'm
Okay.
local, the company, I know the plans, everything says Boston, so it sometimes confusing.
We don't hold,
so.
I'm a Yankee fan, I don't hold it against.
No, I'm in Connecticut. So, but yeah, as pretty much, presented initially, we're looking to install 12 superchargers at the property here. And I'll just kind of breeze through. Please interrupt me with any questions as I go through. Rick did a great job of introducing the project. So just to give you an overall, we're going to be on the north side of the Goodbye Shopping Center. Old Kings Highway is right here. I can zoom in for you. Our goal right here. So basically this entire property is subject to flooding. I'm sure the commission knows that better than I do. We chose the location of the chargers based on really power availability. So we have to come off enough power, one of the primaries. There was basically two locations that Eversource directed us to come off of. One was this northern property, right up to the northeast corner here, northeast corner. The second was down in the south. The south actually is closer to the river. It's actually more in the floodplain. It's actually a larger hazard. Sorry. So between negotiations with the owner and Eversource, this area was chosen for the chargers. Historically, we've been working on this I know I haven't been here before you, but we've been working on this for about 1.5 years now. Originally, we started with just everything on the ground, basically understanding that when these systems are installed, there's fail-safes that are put into them, mainly the shunt trip system. So what will happen is if one of the lowest level charger, which happens to be this charger right here in this location, we pull it off this post, we put it lower, it provides an accessible access for ADA vehicles or ADA operators. It's the lowest charger. And what happens is this shunt trip within this space system, once submerged by water, turns off the entire system. And that sends a signal back to the switchgear, which is located back over here by the transformer, and it basically turns the switch off. And it can't be re-energized till a Tesla charger or Tesla technician comes out, inspects the entire system, makes sure there's no hazards, and then they re-energize it. So that's really the first level of protection. Understanding the complexity of the floodplain in this area, we chose to elevate our critical equipment, meaning the transformer and the switchgear located in this back corner here. Originally, the plan was an earthen mount. We thought it'd be simpler, a little more aesthetic. The issue with the earthen mount is it displaces water. Once it displaces water, it increases potential rise in the floodplain. So we chose to go with the steel structure. The steel structure was seen differently internally with zoning as the earthen mound. So that caused us to have to go to get the variance, which we did, I think, in November or December of last year. So during that process, the steel structure was put in, the additional fencing was added. Basically, there's an existing fence there now. Let's see if I can get you a picture of it. This actually is the existing fence, right in this area. So we're gonna leave that fence unless directed, and we're gonna put up another fence a little bit farther in.
We'll take that one down.
We can if the commission, if wetlands, or if you'd like to see us to do it, or if zoning would like to see us do it. It's right down the property line, so.
It's falling down.
Yeah. So I don't believe the applicant has an issue with it. We just didn't want to.
It depends what fence you put up, but since that one's falling down, that's sort of not much of a choice.
The one thing we did for our fence, and I'll show you a quick detail since we're talking about it, we had to make sure that it survived floods. Right, exactly. So bear with me, I'm sorry. If I can figure this out. that's the platform there, but one more maybe. So to make this fence really more resilient to floodwaters, we've elevated it, the base, roughly 2 feet off the ground. So there's a gap underneath it that allow majority of the water to flow underneath. We've anchored them substantially in the ground with concrete footings, and you know the intent, and we had our structural engineers look at it for uplift and lateral flows. So it can withstand being submerged, but the space underneath it provides a lot of that clearance. To make up for that open space, we're going to propose plantings along the base of the fence as well. So kind of, we don't want to leave that gap. I think the intent was we have our neighbors to the north, and the commission didn't want to have them stare down at this platform, so they provided this fence for some type of screening. So getting back to the other plan. Apologize here, if I navigate my maps.
Did you have to get a variance for the height of the fence also? Because I think it said it's at least 8 feet tall.
I think they directed our fence height as
They
part of the
did,
condition.
okay. Yeah, 'cause it's
Because we didn't
normal.
propose it initially, it was part of the condition of approval.
Okay.
Yeah. The variance really was because the steel structure, the steel platform is considered a structure.
Mhm.
So they asked, that's where we kind of got hung up on the fence. So, getting back to why we were before the commission, is that during the initial layout, we observed we have this intermittent water course or drainage swale that runs between the subject property and I-95 right here. It kind of comes down. I-95 is up much higher than the property. Stormwater comes down, it gets trapped between the properties. Stormwater runs off the parking lot, sheet flows into this drainage swale. I have a picture of it here. So this is really behind the fence. Kind of give you an idea. It's a depression, but I'm assuming during significant rain events, it probably does carry some water. So that was our main focus. We had our soil scientists go out, they looked at that. Unknown to us, they found a small pocket that was described as an intermittent water course. Either way, it probably was created due to the subject property to the north and the south, trapped water over years, changed the soil conditions, became a wetland pocket. It's essentially, it looks like, I have a photo, it's a lawn area, but it has some existing trees. We're gonna try to save as many as possible, and then we're gonna buffer it with additional plantings around our chargers. So that was a surprise. The location of our chargers is really dictated by the distance from our transformer and our switch gear, so we didn't have a ton of flexibility to move outside of that area. So we pushed it a little bit to the west, the best we could. So we really have one charger group adjacent to the wetlands here, and then the other two move to the west, farther away. The initial plans were single posts. These are now called pre-assembled charging units. They come in on a flatbed, they pick them up, they put them right on the ground. There's less disturbance this way. A lot of the wiring and the conduits are internal to the platform itself. Basically, it's a set of 4 chargers and an electrical equipment cabinet. And then all the wiring and conduits run underground back to the east to our switchgear and then our transformer on the platform there. So what Rick had mentioned about the flood tolerant equipment, I'll show you in a cross section of our equipment here. Basically, these charging units are dispensers. Looks similar to a gas pump. I'm sure you've seen these around. The newer ones, the V4 units, are flood tolerant to a certain height because the critical equipment is inside and raised up inside the plastic units. But again, that's in addition to our shunt trip and elevating the other critical equipment such as the switchgear and things like that. So, and then the other post is just the one I spoke of earlier that we pulled off as a single post, and that's really because we have to set it at grade to make the handle height work for ADA and accessible users. I'll go back to our regular plans. I believe that covers most of it. I know the discussion of our plannings was brought up, so I'll kind of show you those real quick. We proposed a grass, a sedge, as well as a dogwood to kind of go around the outside of our, a buffer between the charging unit and that wetland pocket to create a visual and physical barrier between the two. We're going to save an existing tree that's located just to the north of the first charger here, and then we're going to plant along the boundary in this area here. During construction, sediment filter fence will be installed as well to provide any runoff that might happen. But again, these units are installed as a whole piece, so the disturbance is minimal compared to what it would be if we had to excavate foundations and things like that. And then there's a site light as well for each unit, so to provide for service. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Bill?
Is the, I got a bunch of questions.
Sure.
Generally favorable for the project.
Okay.
Does Tesla install, does the entity Tesla install their equipment, or is it a subcontractor?
So, yes and yes. It's a subcontractor, but it's a primary subcontractor they use on most of their projects. But they have oversight, construction oversight internally with their own Tesla
So
managers.
there's an internal PM.
Right, so they have, there's a direct connection between myself, their PM, and their prior, their contractor, which really does most of their work, so, and knows their product.
And is there effectively a Connecticut contractor or Metro, like a MSA regional contractor?
As far as I can tell, there's been one contractor that I've worked with in Connecticut. I can't speak for the region, but yeah.
Just getting an idea of familiarity with like the geography of Connecticut or the practice.
I've worked with one every project I've done in Connecticut has been built by one contractor, so.
And are mostly all projects, are they all cookie cutter?
For the most part, it's really a few components. It's the power component with the transformer. Every project has its own transformer. Every project has its switchgear, and then the projects either are generally single posts or PSU type, these pre-assembled chargers. The technology is advancing. Almost, every few months we get a new type of post, a new type of PSU. So, and generally they're getting smaller and less, the newer PSUs that might be, if they were used here, it's one box for double the charger. So it's less of a footprint. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen here. So we're showing the most, I guess, true or intensive use.
Right. So these modular, well, it makes sense, right? That's like the Tesla business model, is everything's modular. So the installation themselves, is it something that's on a concrete pad and then it's effectively rods that just go into the ground?
Not even. It's just the
weight of its own.
Right. The weight of itself, and this platform just comes in on the flatbed. They crane it over. They prepare the soil just enough to put it down. And
so to the benefit of being in a floodplain is if there was a catastrophic event, it'd almost be easy to just roll a flatbed up, pick them up, put them on the flatbed, and put new ones back down.
If they needed to be repaired,
yeah,
most likely, probably. Or they could pull off these individual posts if they needed to as well.
So they just slide it off and put even the hardware back on top.
And what we've done is we've calculated for a worst case scenario. We looked at these and said, what if the worst case flood comes in and they completely submerge everything? Will one of these pop out of the ground? So we looked at the lightest one, or the smallest footprint, which is the single post for the ADA space. And that calculation has been provided, but it won't basically become an object that can be pushed away.
Is there a ratio of the supercharging cabinets to the charging terminals themselves? You have 3 and 12, so is it 1 per 4?
1 per 4. Right now, that's changing. It's developing, but as of now, it's the typical. It's 1 per 4. 1 cabinet.
And is the configuration generally linear? Is that like an electrical design as well?
Oh, like we have it shown here.
As opposed to having your critical equipment, your transformer and the hardware, and then 2 two sixes, two strings of six opposite, parallel to one another.
I-
Is it always prefer, I mean, obviously you always have to deal with the layout of the parking, but
Right.
do you have a preference of the way that they're laid out?
It's really the existing parking drives the design.
You're agnostic to how you set those up?
Right, we're really using existing spaces in almost 99% of the designs. Rarely are we building new parking lots to accommodate these. We're fitting them into existing uses and existing spaces. Typically, this is a little bit of a rare case, but typically they're remote to not take up priority parking. But in this case, we need some area with the shoulder to be able to put the units in. So it just happens to be closer to the building. But a lot of times, I don't know if you've seen them, they're further away from the front of the building or immediate access. We would have probably preferred to put this critical equipment, the switchgear and the transformer closer, but due to the floodplain and things like that, we're not gonna put a platform right in the middle of the parking lot. So we chose to go more remote into that rear area, and I have no location. So this is kind of give you an idea of what the space look like. It's parked now, but there's a lawn area right in here, and that's kind of where we're gonna put it. So.
Okay.
Do you, we just had an application where the commission had a big concern about snow removal and maintenance. Does Tesla own these, or does the property own the who owns the equipment?
I believe it's Tesla's equipment.
Okay.
The property is leased, as far as I understand.
So they care about the care and the performance of the chargers.
Well, because what happens is this is now in an open network as well. So not just Teslas can charge, other electric vehicles can charge, but if you're driving down 95 and you need a charge, the car will talk to the charging point, and there's a discussion saying there's open chargers right now. So the expectation is that when there's not a vehicle parked in one of these stalls, someone will be able to pull in and use it. So I think to your point is they expect these to be snow to be cleared and the parking lot to be accessible. I can't speak for them because I don't have the understand the agreement, but it's my understanding that the property owner still maintains the snow removal, parking lot cleaning.
Do you have a specific? I'm sure you've got some awesome stories of like bloopers that have happened to the chargers in many ways.
Personally,
payloaders just burying them in snow or backing into them. Does Tesla provide, and is there something where there's like a maintenance plan for the chargers for the property owner?
It'd be the same, we've looked and approved putting these in on retail properties and other properties that we own. It's the same thing as if you were a tenant, like there's like a CAM agreement where like they are required to plow like what Stop and Shop's over here. It's the same type of agreement that they would have to upkeep the property in the common areas. Because it's just a lease.
Right, it's a lease, yeah, those things specified in the lease. We do provide bollards across to protect the charging units.
Right, so all I was thinking is, we're talking about flooding and
Yeah.
how that would impact them, and then the other part would be just because we have like what we call basically a maintenance plan for any activities that are within an upland review area of a wetland. So my question is there a dock that, a standard Tesla dock that relates to that? And it sounds like that maybe that's incorporated, that's an appendix to a lease, so maybe Rick, you just want to incorporate that into the maintenance of the units?
Yeah, I could track that down too.
Probably the same agreement that's already within like all those tenants that are in that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's got like some like white paper that he
Yeah.
just throws it in, and
Yeah.
now we have maintenance on the. This is very cool. Is this the 500 kilowatt charging?
Well,
units?
it's 600 amps. It's the superchargers. They'll charge your car in 45 minutes, half an hour. It gives you, it's a higher speed charger. It's intended to be able to provide, a quicker charge while the occupant uses the one of the stores.
Would a semi ever charge? I mean, I don't think they would fit, but
Not for these.
is
They would need a separate charger.
That's a separate charger.
Yeah, and those would probably be on the interstate, and I'm
Okay.
sure they're coming, if not already existing in other companies and uses, because there are other EV manufacturers out there that make these just charging units. Then there's other companies. their EV
Are the
cars.
semis 1,000 kilowatt, or they operate on 500 kilowatt?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't done one yet, so.
That's it. They're making fun of me.
No,
Well, the consideration is like, if you, all of a sudden you start finding Tesla semi-trucks parked.
Yeah, well, I mean, originally these were closed networks and it could only be Teslas.
Right.
And then they became open networks to provide services for all the EV cars. As far as trucks, I believe that's a network. I haven't done one yet personally, but I know through the New York metro area, I think they're working on some of those, as well as charging stations for trailers and for vehicles with trailers, if you had a boat or something like that. But again, that's not intended here. These are standard back-in, pull-in, back-in spaces. The one thing we specify per each development or each project is the ADA space. We at least have to have one, so because provide that. We get caught because it's not necessarily an ADA space for the property use. It's an ADA space for the charging use. So it's not necessarily has that immediate access. Now in this case we have it, so it's a win-win for everybody. So.
I'm gonna ask one last question. So have you guys figured out a way, because now you mentioned that they're compatible with other cars. Can you now stick the cord in? Is there enough reach on the cord to get to all the different ports on different cars?
So I
without having to park every other spot?
Do you own a Rivian? Is that the question?
I own a Tesla too.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So Rivian makes their own chargers. They do. They're coming out with their own chargers too, I've heard. But I believe the new V4 unit, the intent of that V4, this more up-to-date charging unit, has a longer cord. And I believe that's for that intended use. I'm not 100%, so don't nail me down if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the intent, was to make it more accessible for other vehicles.
Well, congratulations and wish you the best of luck with your application. Thank you.
After that, Peter.
Yeah, I think it's a great project, and no concerns about the impact on the wetlands.
Okay.
But I do have a couple of safety issues or more questions. The shunt that switches off the chargers, what's the protocol on testing that, and what's the frequency of testing that the shunt is still operating?
I don't know exactly. I know that these units are installed with Wi-Fi capability, so they're always communicating back to a central station, so they know when a charger goes down before it's reported, is my understanding.
But they wouldn't know if the shunt was defective or became corroded or inoperative over time?
Well, I would assume it wouldn't, because it's within that unit, but I can find that answer for you. That's something that I can definitely get you an answer for.
And then I understand the shunt's at the lowest level and it turns off the superchargers.
Mm-hmm.
But what turns off the power that's coming into the transformer and the switch if that should become submerged?
That's on the elevated platform. So that's got 1 foot of freeboard above. That critical equipment is on the transformer, and that switchgear are the two units that are elevated up.
But is 1 foot high enough? Because that area gets flooded significantly.
So this is kind of a rough cross section. So we've got our base flood elevation is 48.54, and our bottom of the platform is at 49.5. So we provided a foot of freeboard.
49 inches?
49, elevation 49.5.
Feet.
Yeah, so we've got a foot of freeboard above the established base flood elevation. So using the best knowledge or the best information we have, we are above that to provide
But from ground to the electrical elements or electrical supply of the transformer, how many inches is it from the ground to the electrified portion of the transformer?
Well, to the bottom of the platform is 3.5 feet.
Okay,
So it's going to be roughly
that high, okay.
Yeah, enough that the historical floods will flow underneath that concrete or that steel structure.
And that transformer part will be fenced off for safety purposes?
Yeah, it's on an elevated platform with a fence around it. Something like, basically looks like that from the side.
Great,
So,
thank you.
Yeah, I believe Eversource can just put those on the ground, and if they go bad, they just replace them, but in this case, we're gonna lift everything up.
Okay,
So,
thank you much.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the sectioning off the transformer as well, because you have the fence for the neighbors to the north, I believe, but, have there ever been any issues with, vandalism or, kids climbing it? There's
As far as I know-
stairs and ladders.
I don't think so. I mean, these are the standard green transformers you'll see on every commercial property
Okay.
everywhere. It's nothing special, it's just they need a dedicated transformer
Okay.
to run their equipment. And as far as the cabinets, they're all locked. So,
Okay.
And
you mentioned that the chargers, when they come in, they're sort of pre-assembled. So what is the estimated time of installation for the whole project?
it's a few weeks, depending on weather. We wrote some specifics into this project that if weather is anticipated, everything's got to be cleaned up, stopped,
Right.
secured.
Yeah.
So that might cause delays depending on the season during the installation. But the intent is to be, a lot of it's driven by the availability of the transformer and the equipment. But the platform has to be constructed, and then the PSUs have to be installed. But that'll probably all run concurrent. The conduits will be put in. So I believe it's a few weeks to a month. But we can get a hard number for you too.
Right, and
This isn't a new project. They would know how to tell you.
Right. And I noticed on the site plan, there is, like a basic contingency plan for weather and flooding and, Rick, we've had like more sort of detailed contingency plans for projects before. Would we want, because this is such a populated area, it's a shopping center, would we need anything more than that?
I think,
Well, if it floods, they're gonna close the shopping center down. Like when they had 2 feet of flood, was it 2 years ago?
Yeah.
They shut the shopping center down, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
it's on both, on the.
Right, but in terms
on the
of-
entrance and the exit.
Right,
So-
but in terms of like not storing, hazardous material and things like that, that's some of the stuff that's typically in, contingency plans, that kind of thing. Also, I had a question about how long the superchargers take to charge. You said a half an hour to 45 minutes?
Yeah, within an hour.
roughly?
It very depends on the need of charging. I don't know
Right.
if you've used one, or if you've seen these chargers before. I remember you mentioned you had a Tesla, so you might know exactly. But it's based on the level of battery.
So, there was an April 17th letter where there was mention of I just wanted to clarify some terminology. It says an 8-foot tall flood wall. That is the screening wall. That's the fence?
Right.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. I thought so. And also, I just wanted to circle back to the pocket wetland, where there's some dogwood, silky dogwood, and some sedges. The actual wetland is, I visited it a few times, it's just grass. Would you consider putting in like some meadow mix or something in there in the actual wetland?
We didn't propose it because we didn't want to have a direct impact, but if the commission chose, I don't think the applicant would have an issue with that as part of a condition or something like that. Yeah. I know there was discussion to maybe bolster our planning plan, and I believe they're open to modifying it as needed.
Okay.
So.
Peter touched on it, and Michael and Peter both touched on it, but I had the same question about you. I know that if there's a flood, the system shuts down, and then Tesla sends service people to come and make sure everything's working before it's turned back on. But just as a practical matter, again, Michael said this, we always require, like for underground detention, operations and maintenance plans. There's no one who's kind of every so often, checking to make sure that everything works properly.
Personally, I don't know. I would assume they have a regional, because these are all over the state. So
And to your point, which I just thought of, is, again, we've had some commercial applications come through, and one of the concerns that we have is just litter in general.
Sure.
So,
I'm getting to that too.
All right, you got it. I don't want you got it. I know where you're going. Go
Well,
for it.
what I was because it takes a half an hour to 45 minutes, you said, people will sometimes get out of the cars and they'll go shopping because there's different, go to the post office. But what if people don't do that and they just kind of hang out, they get on their cell phone? We want to make sure that people aren't littering in the wetland area, so like, are there trash cans there?
We could add trash cans.
Yeah.
It's depending on the use of the project. I'll have to confirm that there wasn't an issue between the landlord and Tesla as part of additional trash cans.
Yeah, we just don't want people to see like bushes there and like, throw
Yeah.
their empty coffee cups there or whatever.
Absolutely. There are standard trash cans that can be added. In this case, they weren't. I believe there's a trash can nearby, but I don't think that
Even
would be
just,
an issue.
little
Yeah.
ones or something for people to put there,
Sure.
while they're on their cell phone and waiting for their car to charge.
Yeah, usually
Michael, is that
it's
what
a
you
trash and
wanna say?
recycling.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
just
Yeah.
trash in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting its
Okay.
way into the well.
And, let's see, I think that's all that I have. Yep, that's all I have.
I don't have any questions.
I just have one question.
Sure.
There's the charging station, then there's the cabinets.
Yeah.
What's in the cabinet? Just the connection?
Yeah, basically, it's the, I can show you on our electrical plans, but basically it's the system that runs those 4 chargers. So you have the transformer sends the power to the switchgear sends the power to the all the chargers, and then each cabinet talks to those each individual charging station. So when you plug in your charger, that cabinet turns on, power comes to that cabinet, and then sends a signal back.
And what are
So
the guts of that cabinet?
it's
and are
just
they-
it's electrical equipment.
And how is that situated within the cabinet?
It's mostly elevated, there's a fan and things like that up. I can provide more detail on those if
And
needed.
I know there's
So-
limitations with the station itself because you have to have it so many accessible for use. But there's less of a limitation on the cabinets. Could the cabinets be elevated more?
I believe they're part of this entire pre-assembled unit, but I could double check and see if there's a chance for that. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but we can look and see. I don't think so. I think it comes to the site as a whole pre-assembled unit with the chargers and that supercharger cabinet, but we can look into that and see. I can get you an answer for it.
Anybody else have anything?
I got one bizarre question. So everybody who has
Fits into tonight.
everybody who has an EV car, they're very environmentally responsible. So when you go to a gas station to get gas, you always use the bathroom. Now they're going to be charging their vehicle all hours of the night, and it's open. So
I believe so, yeah.
Are you having any trouble with people like,
It's generally
using the-
located near a use, some type of commercial use,
Yeah.
or a gas, or they're integral with gas stations.
Right. This one's really not per se.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's just a
No,
bizarre thing. I'm wondering how it plays out.
the human factor, I'm not sure, because they're also located on 95. There's actually another company that has chargers.
Yeah.
Right,
but-
I just
but the
almost
whole service
adjacent to this.
station's there, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, it's just
so.
a thought.
The idea of this, though, is really, I mean, sure, people are gonna come off of I-95, but the idea is this is an attraction for the customers of the Good Wives.
I believe so. I think this is more of a community use. If you're coming to the shopping center and you happen to have an EV, you can charge it there.
I think there's Tesla charging stations like another 1.5 miles down 95 from here as a part of that big.
Yeah, they're part of the McDonald's right there.
There you go.
Yeah,
There's-
they're part of the McDonald's right there, so.
Keep trucking down, yeah.
No, but if
I
you're
wouldn't get
coming
off the
down
highway.
I-95, they're not gonna tell you to deviate to Goodwives, whatever it's
Yeah,
called,
yeah.
okay? They're gonna tell you, just go another 1.5 miles, because you zip on, zip on, zip off, zip on, so, and so this is not.
24 hours a day in trash cans, probably.
One follow-up question.
Sure.
How many of your applications do you come before the EPC commissions?
It varies. It varies across the board, from environmental through zoning. Some municipalities have these approved as administrative because they see it as just electrical equipment. Other municipalities, generally, if it's within an upland review area, it's a wetlands issue or an environmental protection issue, no matter what. So that we find ourselves before the commissions. If it doesn't have an environmental impact that way, and it's just another accessory use sometimes, then it's administrative approval. It depends, because a lot of municipalities don't even have regulations. They don't know how to regulate it, so they send us before the commissions to kind of figure it out.
Is Eversource easy to do business with?
So Tesla actually handles most of the heavy lift with Eversource. They do a lot of the preliminary negotiations. They show up to us as the engineers and say, here's our site, this is where the equipment's gotta go, you figure out the rest. So they do that directly, and then we're provided a direct contact.
So generally speaking, there's like a field handbook for Eversource. Is there now like a field handbook, or is there an Eversource field handbook for Tesla?
Not yet, but I think
there.
they're getting there, because really what it comes down to, you know, and they have to have the power, really, to be able to power these units. So that's kind of where we're driven to where to put these. You know, first you show up and say, this is the site we'd like to use, can you provide us power? And they said, we can, but it has to come off this system down here, or it has to come off this system over here. So then now our scope has now become that, and then we try to figure out where to fit our pieces into that puzzle.
So anecdotally speaking, the power that's drawn, this is my very last question, the power that's drawn off of these 12 parking spots, what's that equivalent to? Is that equivalent to the shopping center itself?
No, each one of these superchargers would be like a 600 amp use, but again, they're not, I guess if they're all used at once, you know, right, and they're all ramping up at once, that's where you're gonna get your charges. So there's gonna be variability in that.
All right,
as
but
well.
if they were all, anecdotally speaking, if they were all occupied,
Yeah.
right, and they were all occupied charging, at 600 amps per unit, that would be the equivalent of maybe 3 200 amp homes.
Sure.
If all the homes were lit up at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So that's a lot of power.
It is, and that's why the Eversource here, I can get to our electrical diagram if it might help, but, so basically, you know, we've got our units here, they come into 600 amps, they go out to our superchargers here, and then they get broken down again to each charger. So each charging block is 600 amps, and then that's 4 chargers per 600 amps. So it's not, each dispenser is not 600.
Oh, okay.
Right, so, but again, they tell us, yes, we have the power, no, we don't have the power, and then that's where the locations are chosen that way, so.
Well, thanks for coming in tonight.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you for putting up with all of our questions that are not related to.
Happy to do it. I'm sorry I didn't have every answer, but I'll find out, you know, the remaining ones.
Anyway, thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you.
Okay. You're gonna write that one up, right? Okay. Moving on. EPC 14-2025 PL 25-78, 15 Miles Road, T. Epley and C. Epley to construct a residential addition, deck, hot tub, drainage, and other related features within close proximity to wetlands. The property lies along the east side of Miles Road, approximately 480 feet south of Hollow Tree Ridge Road, and is identified as map 46, lot number 134. The zone is R1/3, and it is approximately 0.33 acres.
So Chairman, the application is, as you know, construct a residential addition, deck, hot tub, drainage, and other related features proximate to the wetlands that are on this property. The property is currently developed as a single-family dwelling, served by both public water and sanitary sewers. The site is characterized by gentle sloping uplands, manicured to lightly wooded wetlands, and a few small trees. So if you look at the plan, Miles Road is up here. The development is primarily situated in the center. To the rear of the property, which is the south, lies an area of wetland. And the vegetation of wetland ranges from lawn grass to some light to moderate woods. Soil scientists went out there and identified the limits of the wetland soils. It's not a flood hazard area by virtue of the fact that some of the improvements lie within 50 feet of the wetland is the reason why the applicant is here this evening, and is to secure the permit for that work. They've been tasked with demonstrating the absence of impact on the wetlands and the areas of resource. They looked at drainage, they looked at water quality, and also they have proposed certain mitigations to offset potential impacts to displaced lawn, to filter runoff, et cetera, as it drains in that southerly direction. There are no direct encroachments into the wetlands. About 914 square feet of the upland review area is going to be temporary or permanently affected. That area is generally lawn. Setbacks of no less than 33 feet with the major components of the structure, and the drainage outfall lies within a proposed drainage outfall about 8 feet from the edge of the well itself. No larger individual groups of trees will be affected by the construction. A drainage analysis was done, and it's gone through the review by the town's peer reviewer. In the existing condition, there's several watersheds that exist. There'll be an increase in the amount of imperviousness, and if left unmitigated, would result in an increase in runoff, and the applicant has chosen, their engineer, to mitigate that impact by creating and managing post-construction watersheds and doing a structured drainage system consisting of infiltrators. Test holes were dug to demonstrate feasibility. The engineer has established that it will not cause, in the storms of the study will not cause a rise, will not result in a increase in runoff for all storms ranging from 1 to 50 years in intensity, and has certified that this project will have no adverse impact on drainage infrastructure or the adjoining properties. There's been an erosion control plan provided. Portions of the structures that have collect potential areas of sediment or debris have been fit with deep sumps and outlet controls. And again, they're using infiltration to treat the runoff, not only to filter but also to cool that runoff. A landscaping mitigation plan has been proposed. You will note, and if you've been to the property, previously the line of evergreens has been planted in and around the wetland. The applicant is expecting to maintain those, but have come up with a more low-profile planting to the front of it that includes a pretty hefty collection of trees, shrubs, and native ground covers. And they've applied the concepts that the commission has generally applies to each of these developments involving true natives, and who gets to pick what the true natives will be in any kind of substitution, and deer graze, use of non-synthetics, and use of organic land and lawn care practices. And through the process, they have looked at alternatives to try to reduce the amount of encroachment. And they've done that. They actually reduced by eliminating an additional drainage system. One thing of note, they have a separate mitigating system for the, I think it's a crawl space, that's to mitigate the impact of any kind of sump pump discharge that comes out of the new construction. The applicant is here to discuss it. I'm available to answer questions.
Good evening again. My name is Brian Carey with Land Tech. I'm a professional wetland scientist and Connecticut certified arborist. I'm here on behalf of the property owners, Todd and Christina Epley. I'm here. Andy Semelides has been handling this. I've worked on the project a little bit with him, but he's on vacation. Land Tech did all the work on this project, including civil engineering, the environmental assessment, the planting plans, and the wetland evaluation. As Mr. Talamelli said, it's a single-family home. Basically, they're looking to put an addition onto the property, fairly modest addition with a hot tub. Drainage will be collected into 4 330 Coltech systems. There is a separate sump pump system that's connected to the footing drains around the new proposed basement. It is actually a full basement. This will barely run, only in worst case scenarios. Basically, the groundwater table is actually 2 feet below the finished slab elevation. So that really is a belt and suspenders type of scenario right there. The homeowner's a contractor, so he does have a lot of, he's an electrician, so he does have some pretty expensive gear that he needs to put in here because his garage is full. That basically discharges to a level spreader that is on the edge of the planting bed. Again, he did put a row of arborvitaes in here for screening from the neighbors, which is within the wetland, but it's not really causing any impact to the wetland. We did, at the request of staff, come up with a mitigation planting plan that is staggered with the trees, shrubs, and then a lower sedges and basically potted perennial plants that are all native. They're all native plants, so it's going to look like a pollinator type of meadow garden when it's established. That being said, we did talk about the drainage. It is in compliance with the town's engineer requirements. We did get a letter from Mr. Canis, again from Time Bond. We did review that. He had some comments. We responded. He did not have any further questions and was fine with that. As far as general erosion and sediment controls, we do have silt fence basically rimming the property during the project. But again, this is a real small disturbance area. I don't expect any type of issue with erosion or sediment control, just because the site is so flat. Again, specific or standard conditions, we read staff's report. We take no exception to anything that was in the staff report dated July 2nd. And that's really all. We have an updated O&M plan clarifying all the owner's responsibilities. And basically, this is in compliance with your with the Darien Inland Wetland regulations. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Michael?
On the landscaping plan, it says, who's the landscape architect on this?
It's me.
Okay. It says landscape berm with use. Are you
That's our
conducting grading within the wetland area?
No, there is no grading within the wetland area for this. There's a small area. This has already been planted.
So there's an existing berm?
So there is a wood chip. He did place wood chips around the trees when he planted them, but it's not soil that's been imported into that area.
So the trees already exist?
Yes, correct.
So there's no grading or
No.
any activities being conducted?
No activities. The closest we're getting, again, is a buffer planting area. The wetland line meanders a bit. The trees that are planted, he basically went on a straight line as much as he could. This was done before we did the actual wetland delineation. So the buffer plantings are being put right adjacent to the wetland line. All the plantings, as you can see on the table, I think you do have, they're either obligate or facultative, facultative plus, facultative wetland plus. So they're all either wetland plants or adjacent buffer plants.
Thank you.
One thing in terms of grading that was left out is that they have made provisions to open up and select areas in that wood chip
Yeah.
berm is to allow for positive drainage through it.
Is that between every tree or
Not-
just
no,
every
I
so
think
often?
it could be every so
So
often.
the wetland, there is some ponding in here, but this, I did observe this several times, that the wood chips are not preventing the water from going through that berm. And he's been instructed after that wood chips are decayed over time, that he won't go back in there and mulch it. The idea is that this will grow up as a screening. This will have a lower screening in front of it and then basically step down to perennial flowers.
also.
No questions.
Carolyn?
With the planting plan again, you had mentioned the native plants that are going in front of the arborvitae. On the planting plan, there's an arrow that says area to be seeded with native seed mix. I would assume that is around the native
Correct.
plantings. So what is that? Is that wildflowers or meadow
It's
mix?
a conservation meadow mix.
A meadow mix.
Yeah, so there is a note on here. It's just a New England wetland plant meadow mix or similar. It's normally rye and there's some other, either Ernst or New England wetland plants has a perennial mix. Conservation mix. It's not a wetland mix. It's normally like little blue
But it's
stem.
native.
It's
Yeah,
native. It's native grasses.
Okay. And there's no, we had this discussion in the last application, but there's no issue with lawn creep into this area?
No, I mean, right now, this is going to be managed, I mean, this will be the bed, so if he were to creep in there, he'd have to actually cut all the landscaping that he's kind of installed, so that would be not his best scenario if he's gonna spend the money to do that.
Okay.
This is a fairly small site, I mean, overall, it's only
Yeah.
0.3 acres.
Yeah. In photo 2, there was a picture of some potentially invasive species, and it's between the deer fence that looks like it's been there for a while and the
Back
stone
here.
wall.
Yeah.
Are those native invasives, like poison ivy, or what are they?
I didn't do a full inspection of that.
But it was recommended that they remain there. It says, what did it say? It said,
I mean, I remember there was a lot of jewelweed right back there, which is.
might be jewelweed,
Yeah, so
right?
jewelweed,
Yeah.
it's not invasive.
Okay.
So that's, for this is a little bit, there is a small stream
Right.
that goes along there. And, I do remember there being a
Yeah,
lot
it
of
says this
jewelweed.
photo captures the narrow corridor between the newly planted arborvitae and an existing stone wall at the rear of the property. It's partially enclosed by a mesh fence and
Yep.
natural vegetation, including early successional and potentially invasive species, have taken hold in the understory. This corridor represents the wetland edge and an important transitional flow path.
I know over here, there was, on the neighbor's property, there was a bunch of porcelain berry coming in. So I told him that he'd want to watch that,
Yeah.
or else that will be covering all those trees. But
Right.
this is pretty inaccessible back here.
Okay. Yeah, okay. and
That's one of the reasons he planted the trees.
Okay. The detailed planting notes I thought were really good. Going to be, while you're monitoring the invasives, again, the same thing that I said before, which is, might be a good idea to let the homeowner know what you're doing and why, so that, because they will come back even after 2 years.
Yeah, I did talk to him. I mean, if generally this is gonna be continue to be manicured lawn in the backyard, and then anything that will grow into here, any invasives would be removed as part of the normal maintenance of this. This is kind of a hard area to get to.
Yeah, okay. That's all I had.
Thank you.
I have no questions.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? No, Rick, you want to write this one up? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, okay. Moving on, EPC 15-2025 PL 25-87, 6 Crossroad L. Nicholson and A. Nicholson to construct an in-ground pool, pergola, outdoor kitchen, terraces, drainage, grading, and other related improvements in a special flood hazard area and proximate to a watercourse and open space area. The access to the property lies along the north side of Cross Road, approximately 620 feet east of Tokenique Trail. Is identified as map number 65, lot number 8-5. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.600 acres.
So Chairman, you highlighted what the pertinent regulated activities are. It's for this in-ground pool, pergola, outdoor kitchen, terraces, walls, and other improvements on the property, also including certain improvements to the dwelling. The property is currently developed with a single-family dwelling, driveway, underground mitigating drainage structures that were existing, that were installed as part of the original redevelopment of the property. The regulated areas, per this agency, is the water course, and the setback to that water course that extends up onto the majority of where the dwelling is, but it includes the backyard where most of these new features are going to be constructed. The property contains numerous resources, and mostly coastal resources, that include the coastal flood hazard area. About 2/3 of the property is affected by the coastal flood, shorelands, tidal wetlands, and then the freshwater or the water course. The property, again, is in part in the special flood hazard area. The applicant is tasked with the presentation of their application to demonstrate that it had a minimal adverse impact or minimal impact on the regulated areas and the areas of resource. They looked at drainage, they looked at water quality, and general compliance with the flood regulations in terms of flood impacts, and ensuring that the structures that are being proposed are resilient to, essentially resilient to flood impacts and damages. The engineer has done a site plan based on the existing conditions survey. There are no direct encroachments into the area of the water course. Just as an aside, there's also on this property, not on this property, but adjoining it, is an area of open space that was established at the time of subdivision. It basically lies within the water to the rear of the dwelling. About 10,800 square feet of both the upland review area and the floodplain will be either temporary or permanently affected. Major project elements lie about 43 feet to the edge of the watercourse. The lesser, including the fills, about 36 feet. Grade change is relatively low. Cuts and fills not expected to exceed about 2.5 feet. And although several trees of size on the property are going to be are proposed to be lost as a result of construction, there is one tree that lies within the regulated areas that will be lost. It's a pretty substantial tree. The applicant provided a drainage mitigation plan, again, with an increase in the amount of imperviousness. They established what's going to be, how it flows in the existing conditions and how treated. With the increase in imperviousness, if not subject to further mitigation, would be an increase in the rate and volume of runoff. Applicant has done test holes and has generated a post-construction review of the watersheds and has managed those watersheds and is seeking to not only to mitigate the drainage impact, but the water quality impacts by adding to that existing subsurface drainage system that is on the property. So they are adding 2 additional rays of Coltex. They've also done things such as taking some of the areas that were proposed to be like sidewalk, will be in certain terrace elements are going to be composed of gravel, pea stone, and open jointed bluestone to provide some additional measure of infiltration on the property. If built per the plan, the engineer has concluded no adverse impact on drainage in adjoining properties. our peer reviewer has reviewed it and generally agrees with the design and the impact analysis. There's some minor elements that staff, should the board move forward, or the commission move forward with this, that they modified just to make sure that, all the basins have, and all the points of collection have deep sumps and outlet controls to collect the sand, sediment, and debris before discharging to their final destination. It's important to note that all the drainage systems on this property are going to be tied to existing outlets, so they're not actually going to be digging or modifying space adjoining the water course, is that they're tying into existing areas of discharge that discharge to riprap outfalls already. The engineers also looked at those and it's verified to the satisfaction of our peer reviewer that they are not in need of additional enhancement. There's been documentation confirming the absence of impact on flood heights or changing to the dynamics of the flood. There's been a basic flood contingency plan that's been provided. There may be some room for some minor modifications of that plan to ensure that our storage and stockpile areas, to the extent feasible, are outside of the floodplain, and we wouldn't have to worry about moving them during the construction phase. There's been some representative plans provided to confirm the floodproof nature of the features that have been proposed. So we have certifications that relate to the pool and some of the other features. But as we move, if we get past the EPC and going to the planning and zoning, moving towards a building permit, some additional certifications will be necessary for the remainder of the elements, and I tried to point out the ones. The big one is the kitchen, the outdoor kitchen, is that usually those things are floodproof by elevation. If they can't, they usually move towards a selection of different types of units in which you can get the essential component pieces above the limits of the base flood plus a foot in order to avoid flood damages. So there still is some opportunities to look at those elements. I think the project engineer will talk about his alternatives that he looked at and how he modified the plan in response to the issues raised by the commission. And then you'll note that there's been pretty comprehensive landscaping plan that's been provided for the spaces adjoining the water course. And I outlined exactly what they're proposing, and standard notes and have been applied in terms of choices of plantings, making substitutions, limiting the materials used for deer graze, applying recommendations for organic land use and maintenance practices. They've also provided protection for some of the other trees in the development envelope that are not going to be directly impacted. And the only other thing is that the commission may consider enhancing that planting bed with a demarcation feature of some form. I don't think we really want a fence in the floodplain, and what we ever do is, because it's going to be subject to flooding, but perhaps
Heavy rocks.
a bolder demarcation feature in select areas to give you that visual as to what the limits in the landscape are. Rob Frangione's here, and I see a whole group that can be able to answer your questions.
Good evening. For the record, Rob Frangione, Frangione Engineering.
Excuse me, condolences for your Uncle George.
Oh, thank you.
Please continue.
Yeah, that was a great way to start the July 4th weekend. But thank you. Rob Frangione, Frangione Engineering, and thank you, Rick, for doing virtually my entire presentation for me. With us tonight is Logan Nicholson, the owner, Matt Popp with Environmental Land Solutions, and Shane Duche from Artemis Landscape Architects. As stated earlier, there really are no wetlands or watercourses on the site. The wetlands that are here are tidal. The regulated area is the floodway of the Tokenique Brook. It's basically the uppermost reach of Scotts Cove. The pool is basically going in the only place it can go. The septic system is in the front, and You can't put an accessory structure in the front yard anyway. The zoning setbacks are basically right about here. So we can't bring it further this way to the east, otherwise it would also get closer to the regulated area. All of the existing impervious surfaces are treated by Coltech units. What we plan on doing is adding more and tying in, and as Rick said, the overflows will then go to existing outlet points. We've treated the water quality volume. As Rick said, Joe Canis has signed off on that. The catch basins that we put in will have 2-foot sumps, and they will have outlet traps so that those trap the sediments. We have a robust planting plan, as noted, which is in these areas here, and Matt will go over that. That's really all I have to say. That I think that there's no likely potential quantifiable adverse impact to a regulated area, and I'll let Matt continue.
Good evening, I'm Matthew Pop, landscape architect from Environmental Land Solutions. I'm just here to help out. I didn't prepare the plans, but I gave some guidance on the plans. As you know, the existing houses here down at the bottom of the sheet is the tidal pond. Right along the pond edge, there's some areas of Phragmites growing there, which is non-native, kind of invasive species. There's a fence along that rear property line. All of the lawn area, all of the site back here, the remaining of the site is a well-manicured lawn area. As Rick noted, it's very gently sloping. When I'm looking at the contours, I didn't even think it had that much slope to it. There's an existing tree approximately right here. But if you look at the 2016 aerial photo, historic photos, you can see there was another tree over here. I believe it might have been an oak, a similar oak. It's been reported that that tree fell and actually hit this tree right here. So when you look at that tree, you can kind of see the branches on the house side have been removed, and you can kind of see where it's been cut. I'm surprised that when this tree came down, that this tree, the owner didn't take that tree down, because it is fairly close to the house, and it's the only one there. Okay, what we're proposing, there is an extensive landscape plan for the entire site. I think they're proposing maybe over 40 trees, but I wanted to break this out separate for permitting purposes, so we have an EPC planting plan that gets bonded, so we're not getting the remaining of the site hooked up with the EPC permitting. So a lot of the other plantings of trees aren't native, so and such forth. So that's why we have a separate plan here, and it doesn't show all those other trees. And again, I think we would be agreeable to having the true natives. We can get that note on the plan. We would be agreeable to, again, the planting areas are here and here. Just having a few sunken boulders, 2-man boulders. I think they're
No, don't get into that.
200 to 700
It's
pounds.
9 o'clock, no.
Yep. So we would be agreeable to having some sunken boulders that pop out of the grade slightly. And I think we could be agreeable to the standard kind of NOFA land care practices, which I think would be somewhat routine now. And that fence basically stays the same. That provides a good buffer to the pond. So.
Can I ask some questions?
Please.
Yep.
All right, so I'd like to focus on what you just talked about. I have a problem with the sheet flow coming off of that property down into the pond, out to Scouts Cove, the whole area in the middle there. The lawn is going right down to it at this point. The fence is right down there on it. There's lawn on the other side of it. I really believe, we've got to do a better buffer there. Get right back to where the property line is, move the fence back to that line, and leave that buffer zone from that property line down to the water body. You've got this big gap there. It's a beautiful lawn, but it's got to have all the different fertilizers, pesticides to keep it that way. And we gotta keep that from getting down into that zone. So I firmly believe you gotta go back to that property line and keep that buffer from there down.
When you're out there with that fence, there is lawn on the other side. What I do like about that lawn, it keeps the phragmites in check. I was thinking it would be nice almost to have a mow and strip all on both sides, on the other side of that fence, because otherwise, over time.
But we need some distance, some distance from the time that lawn stops, whether there's phragmites there or anything else before it leaches into that. And right now, it's right on top of it. And I don't understand the property line arrangement. I understand there's some easements or whatever were set on there, but, that property line would be perfectly spot to stop it. And I don't know, was everything supposed to be natural past that property line? I didn't read any of the easements in here, but obviously it's not now. So that's something that ought to be looked into if that's the case. Property line was established for that. There's open space below that. Are we allowed to have lawn in that open space? Even if we are, it should be backed up. Well, that's my personal opinion on this.
That's the first time I've heard Matt say pond, watercourse, lawn, buffer, lawn. That you'd have to walk me through that one. But wasn't a Holly Pond project that you came before the commission several months ago? And it was almost a carbon copy of this project. And you had this beautiful buffer of an expansive lawn, and we cut the lawn back. And we talked about how it was more floral vegetation, and then it got more hardy. And then it was the Good Wives. It was
The one that was on like Pear Tree? Is it that one?
Or Nickerson.
Maybe it was Nickerson. But Matt was the landscape architect on that
I
one.
don't recall you being happy with any of my plans. I don't recall you being happy with any of my truth.
No, we were playing.
No, I don't
Matt,
recall
as
it.
long as we're not calling arborvitaes, like when we have two driveways where we're subdividing properties, and we're trying to say there's an environmental quality of arborvitaes to, share an easement of a driveway, or, we're doing like speculative development and really stretching the environmental value of a tree. But your plans are great, but that's why you come to the commissioners, because we opine on this stuff. We totally get why an applicant wants to have a lawn to the bank of I would want that, right? And our job, in fairness to you, is we want to improve and maintain the quality of the environment.
So I think this project does maintain that quality. Again, I always think too is when you have a pool, basically has no runoff from there, although I think it probably does count. So that area is less lawn. I'm not sure the size of the pool, if it's 20 by 42 or something like that.
Is the line, Matt, is the line that goes horizontally through the property, or Rob, it's cut off on our electronic. It says water, is that the upland review line right there? Is this a 100-foot line?
That's the CAM review line.
That's a CAM.
The wetland.
So that would be is that 100 feet, Rob?
It's 100 feet.
Right,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, that one that's sort of curved, that goes just above the pool.
The wetland, the regulatory for the wetland is pretty close. They're almost coincident. It's just basically, I have it cut the 100-foot coming through here, and that's 100 feet basically to the floodway. Whereas I think the CAM line is 100 feet off of the mean high water. So they're close. I mean, in some areas they're almost coincident, but they'll have for this board's purpose, the regulatory area goes right up to the house.
Okay. And Rob or Matt, all of the shaded patio area that
For example, the living room through the French doors walks out onto a patio and then to a walkway.
Mm-hmm.
The dining room, the butler pantry, or no, those are just windows, and the roof porch area. Are those all existing patios and walkways? Everything that hugs the house?
This is all existing in here. There's a bunch of existing. What's being proposed is basically there's a roofed-in porch now, right here. That's getting expanded a little bit. There's existing flagstone patios. what's being proposed is basically the pool, this patio here, the outdoor kitchen area. So all of this lawn that's currently there now is getting removed, and this walkway that's gonna come around is gonna have grass joints.
Right, so that L shape that you did, so basically
This
the
here.
walkway that hugs the house in the,
This on the left.
that's all proposed?
That's proposed, yes.
Right, okay. So it's fair to say you have an extensive amount of hardscaping work that you're gonna be doing, and you're gonna enlarge the roofed porch area.
Slightly, that's
Yeah,
probably the
yeah,
smallest part
it's
of this
okay, it's
project,
all right.
yes.
When was did the applicant build the house?
No, I think the house was built in 2005
Okay.
or so.
Been there 2 years.
And in 2005, Rick, did the applicant have a pool proposed on plan?
There, I believe there was, because I saw it on the old set, the original design. Yeah.
And was there an approval for a pool?
That I don't know. I think
Or
it
did
was
the
I think it
commission
was Stearns
decline
Wheeler who did it. And,
an application?
I don't know.
Can you pull that and see later? Can you pull that and see what was presented to the commission and what the commission voted on? Eric?
In
I don't-
2005.
I think-
Well,
don't believe it
yeah, it was
came
even
to-
before my time.
Those upland review areas would have been
I
quite a
don't believe
bit
it came to
smaller.
the EPC, it came to, I think, planning and zoning.
Went to P and Z, because I think back then, that was before the delineation of certain, because the problem is we have overlapping jurisdictions here. We've got both EPC and CAM looking at this, and so I think when the house was built, it was originally just under the purview of CAM. So, but I do remember seeing on the original site plan that there was a pool proposed.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. Yeah, Matt, you've done a bunch of these, you know what we like to see. So I would love to see the extensive planting plan.
Let's see, let me see, real quick, let me see if I can pull up.
Wait, you mean the one that's in the non-upland, outside
Well,
of
the one that they're
flood?
proposed, but
Oh.
the one that you're gonna propose.
For the,
to us.
yeah, but again, there's some ornamental plantings in there, so I didn't want to.
Could you stake that property line, so we could actually see what that property line is?
That's a good idea.
Because that's, it's confusing there, where that property line is, where the fence is, where the grass is. And then we probably need to do some research on what the deal is with that open space, as far as what is allowed and not
Yeah,
allowed.
that was a little confusing, because you said some of it's underwater. That was-
Basically in the river.
Yeah.
It's in the river, okay.
Probably when they subdivided the property, they had to give open space, so they go, well, see, it's in the water.
Yeah, and we may have jurisdiction over some of that open space, because a lot of it does fall into our conservation parts.
I don't know if it's a conservation easement or just open space.
I know, I think we need to look, because it's
Open space on
written
the
out
map.
here as part of the,
What is it?
Open space on the map.
on their deed, statutory warranty deed, there's four different places where they're talking about open space, conservation easement, and we probably ought to understand what that is. If they're not going to go ahead and do the right thing here, then we need to understand what that is.
Yeah, conservation easement in favor of the EPC, according to the deed.
Bear with me, I have the drawing, it's just kind of slow with the. So this was,
No.
Okay.
No, we
and
didn't.
it's gonna be very hard to see. Well, I'll bring it up here. So that was the proposed house. I forgot I have touch screen. That was the proposed pool, and they showed, the trees coming out. It had the fence going on. Actually, there really wasn't even much of, they didn't even show a fence back then. But they showed a wall coming in here, fill. I'll try to blow this up a little bit more for you.
Rob, is that the original application? Is that what you're?
So this I got from the health department, because I needed the septic information for the test holes for the septic design for the reserve. But, yeah, I mean, it was showing the house, and then.
So
septic
this
tanks
is
came
circa 2005 is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
that pool's here.
So that's all I got, but it.
Where's the pool in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some there.
Yeah,
So it's
I
oriented
had my
differently.
birthday a couple months ago and my vision just went.
But that's it right there.
Very
right
neat.
tangle.
Yeah.
So
I'm
the
serious.
pool's oriented differently than it is on the
Yeah,
plan.
it's oriented
Right.
differently,
Yeah,
totally.
they have
It's
a
90
pool.
degrees from what it was,
Right.
from,
So,
So they never had it, they never put it in,
Right.
obviously.
no, they chose not to, yeah.
Yeah.
See, you see the two trees, you can see the two trees that were,
right.
that were there, okay?
Oh, yeah.
You, just to orient yourself, those are
Right.
the two trees, and
Yep.
one fell.
Right.
Can we upload that to the application so we can see it later?
I can, I mean, that's,
Give it to,
it was yeah, this drawing was done Stearns and Wheeler. And it was approved, looks like '05, it was received February 1st, 2005 from the health department. So, again, I don't know if in 2005, this property was required to come before the EPC, because back then it was.
I don't think so.
It would have just been camp,
Yeah.
so.
Rob, can you point on your plan, on your proposed, where that pool was? On the 2005?
So, real rough.
Approximately?
I mean, the pool.
It's where the kitchen
is
and
pretty
the,
much where the
Yes.
outdoor, where the outdoor kitchen would have gone. They had the pool coming out like this.
Right.
So, we brought it in tight and had to go with the contours.
And the house, and the footprint of the house on the 2005 plan is exactly what we're looking at today, right?
Pretty close, yeah. I mean, it was, it's got an L-shaped house, and that's what this is.
Well, like I mean, again, that's why I'm asking for us to see that, is
Right.
the breakfast nook, the dining room, and the living room, that's exactly where it is in 2005.
It actually looks pretty, almost identical.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the house.
almost identical.
Yeah.
Mm.
I didn't want to say it was like exactly.
Well, I know, you're an engineer.
Pretty close to being.
I think the bill, if I'm allowed to speak.
Sure. We'd love to hear you.
Sure,
But you have to
sorry.
come up to the podium. And please identify yourself, sir.
Sure. Logan Nicholson, I'm the owner of the house. We moved to Darien in 2023, and we bought it from the original owners that had it built in around 2007. So if this was planned in 2005, it took a couple years for them to decide what they actually wanted to build. I think they finished it around 2008, is my understanding from talking to them. So they clearly just decided not to build the pool, as far as I know. And the house that was in the plans that we've seen is the house that they built, same footprint. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We all know what happened in 2008, so maybe that's why they didn't build.
I guess.
So just, again, I think that we could take a look at, maybe expanding the buffer areas. I think that maybe we get to replace that tree, replacement tree or two down along the pond edge. I think that would be valuable.
I'm not sure, Matt, you're the expert on that. I'm not sure what kind of, that's a rather large tree. I'm not sure a rather large tree goes right next to a wetland, like, right next to a pond like that, because the roots won't be able to absorb the, but anyway.
Yeah, but somewhere back.
You're the
In
expert.
the back, yeah. But normally, I guess, swamp white oak, you see kind of growing down in those areas.
There's just one thing, I'm just trying to connect dots here, Matt, is if you're saying, hey, we want to have a landscape plan, we have a buffer, why is it that the buffer is just the bookends of the property and it doesn't go across? Is that for views?
I think to maintain like the long-term buffer, if you put it like in the middle, there's more pressure for those to maybe disappear over time. If they're on the side, people grow accustomed to them. That doesn't block the view. So quite often when I do a landscape plan, the plantings are off to the sides.
But just to be clear, is the proposal is to maximize views. It's not a right or wrong
Well,
question.
they don't want
it's
to, they don't want to
just-
block the
yeah, okay.
view.
The view is there today,
Yeah.
and it goes all the way up to the edge.
Yeah.
And we're trying to preserve the view.
But when you're disturbing 10,000 square feet, you might have to give up something, you know, it's like down there, and that's kind of what we're trying to protect. And that's where these boulders may need to come into play again,
Yeah.
because fences get moved very easily, like this.
No,
one may have
definitely, the
been moved
fences, yeah,
around.
they're not really long-term.
So, I mean, I would stick to that property line to keep things at least
So,
on the right.
our esteemed chairman can explain it, someone else could explain it. I mean, generally speaking, we're trying to keep our water courses clean and continually improve them. And everybody wants that $1 million view, and there's just give and take of improving the environmental value of the wetland and mitigating against just having lawns that run right into the water courses. So your consultants have said, hey, we've got an extensive landscaping plan, but we don't see that right now. And we're just trying to connect some dots with what this draft plan looks like. And I'm just trying to explain myself to you so you understand where I'm coming from. And generally speaking, what we like to see is the mitigation of the lawn off of, you know, on your property outside of a material buffer with landscaping. And you can totally accomplish that and still keep your views. And when you start whacking down big trees, then we're gonna want like some equitable, an equitable trade-off for losing a mature tree so that over time, you have new trees that grow on the property.
I understand, thank you, we're happy to accommodate.
So that's it. That's all I got tonight. I'm done.
You're spent.
So you can
I'll
preserve,
do it when we adjourn.
so you can preserve the view with low-profile landscape,
Right, absolutely.
native landscape.
Yeah.
Is that something that you want to see, or do you want to see as a condition?
Well, don't we get
I want
to
to
see
see
a
it.
plan?
I want to see this whole plan before I feel comfortable, so.
The whole plan on the whole property? or
No,
just
no, the plan
That's
that
in
we're
the
talking, that I'm
regulated areas.
particularly
The
talking.
plan that affects our upland review
Yeah.
area.
Okay.
Right, we still have the easement in the,
That-
we'll go back, Peter.
That's what I was gonna say. I would
Okay, go ahead.
like to see the easement and the open space declaration marked on the plan. Now, if it's in the water, I get that, but at least show it. Show where it begins and where it ends.
And the conditions.
And the conditions, yeah, is it natural state? If it's an easement in favor of the EPC, which it states it is, then it should be in natural condition, right? Shouldn't
Not
be a lawn.
necessarily. Way back when, you know, they, like in Greenwich, they were calling open space parks and playground. And that was their open space. And then, so there's always, so you have to read it.
Yeah.
So maybe we can get
And
a
if it
copy of it.
doesn't, then
Oh,
we
yeah.
should still upgrade to what we want now.
Yeah, yeah.
Again, this wouldn't have been, we're fairly certain this wasn't regulated by APC back in 2005, so the language of that open space agreement may not have been, I don't know what these.
Well, this
easements are.
is saying a conservation easement from Elizabeth Wilson to the Environmental Protection Commission to the town of Darien dated January 12th, 1989,
Wow.
and recorded July 10th, 1989, volume 578 at page 83. So the
Well,
EPC was involved.
We'll have to ask the surveyor then, because that
Have
might
you,
have been.
have you seen the conservation easement?
I have not.
Have you, Matt?
We have a survey.
So then you don't know what's in it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That, just, we should know, that's all.
And can we have that marked out, that survey at that level down there?
That property line?
Yeah, just that lower line. Yeah, please.
We'll call Seymour.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, isn't that interesting though, is if that got done, why did Seymour not put it on a map?
I don't know.
That was
It's
gonna
off
be
the
where I
property.
was gonna go
From
with
what I
that.
understand, it's off the property.
Yeah, you understand it to
Yeah.
be in a pond, I guess, right?
That it is, they
Well,
made
if
it a
it's in a
separate
pond, how's
lot.
they gonna mark it?
Yeah,
It's a separate lot.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that fence may be
So
down.
if
But
you
they
have
would have
that,
done lot A, lot B, and then the map would have lot A, lot B, and then have the notes for it. Anyways.
Because they've already
We'll
called.
find out.
They already called out the driveway easement for this, because the driveway for this parcel was actually on an easement for another lot. So the survey would have shown, in my opinion, what other kind of easements might have been on there, but I don't know.
Okay, we'll find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah, thank you.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Hi. So you've talked about the oak tree in the back that's being removed, but are there any other trees in the upland review and up to the flood line that are being removed? Because I think there's a cedar tree.
There may be over here a Japanese maple tree.
That's being relocated, I think.
Yes, but, again, it's not native. It's pretty big, so I'm questioning if that is.
What about that, there's a big cedar tree?
That's being protected.
Oh, it's protected, okay. And then the trees that are along the waterway, there are, I don't know what kind of trees they are.
They're down here. Yeah, those stay.
Yeah.
Those are staying, okay, so there's nothing
They're pretty
being removed
small.
along
Yeah,
the
those trees
water?
are
Because I
pretty
actually saw some nesting, like, hawks in there.
Yeah, now the only large tree
Right,
that's
that's
coming
hawks.
down in the regulated area
I
is
thought
the
hawks.
one, is the big one, so.
Eagles.
Big birds. I don't know what they were, but they were big birds that were.
All the trees on the
Hawks
north
do
side of the
next
property,
to
was- or those are all gonna be
posts.
protected, so.
Oh, okay.
Those screening trees will be protected.
Okay, so that was my question. Are there any other trees along the waterway that are being removed? Okay. I did have the same concern as Bill and Michael about the lawn going right up. So just, and to Rick's point, there are low shrubs that you can put in there. You can still see the water. The plant list is what you've presented is good. I just wanted to make sure, are they all suitable for, given that there's potential flooding there? Are they plants that will survive that kind of?
Let me just
Yeah.
check. I would say, yes, they would be appropriate for.
Okay, okay, all right. And I had asked if a boulder demarcation would make sense, and also, organic land care. I think, we've talked
Yeah.
about how that's becoming more standard. It's, more and more businesses are doing it because people want it. I think it is a particularly sensitive area, so I would not just recommend it, strongly recommend it. And also, you didn't show us the plants that are in the other area. I just wanted to say, we don't require native plants as a punishment. I mean, they are beautiful and they do, have a really, serve an important purpose. And, though you'll be outside of our jurisdiction, I would still encourage you to incorporate some into your plan because they serve a very beneficial purpose. And fences, every fence that is on the plan has to have a concrete footing. I noticed there were a couple of different fences. Could you just point out where they will go? I think around, there might be one around the garden maybe?
Oh.
But there were a couple of different iterations of fences.
I mean, that would just be set in concrete like a normal fence. I mean, they could just post hole dig it, throw some concrete in, put the
Yeah.
fence in. What's your concern?
Oh, well, I mean, when it's, when it's close to a wetland, I mean, you have to do that here because of it has to be able to withstand the flood velocities and so forth. But generally, when it's close to a wetland or in an upland review area, we don't like them to be installed that way because of the disturbance. So I was just wondering, how many areas of fencing are we talking about?
I'll have to get back to you on that question. I don't have that exact answer. So the only fencing, I think, to your point, is around the garden, right?
There would be fencing around here,
Okay,
and then the one that we've talked about that's around the property.
but that's already there.
It's already there.
Yeah,
right.
you're not
Just
replacing that.
if your colleague wants us to move it, we'd have to move it.
Right, no, but that is not being replaced, it's staying,
Staying.
okay.
So it would just be around this, and so
I'm
it's.
concerned about new fencing.
Yeah, that's
It's
de
just this.
minimis.
We're not putting any fencing anywhere here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Yep.
I noticed also, it must be on like the northeast side of, this is just something, again, that we routinely ask people to clean up. There's like some branches and yard debris that's on the other side of the fence. I think it's on the other side of the property from the play set. Yes.
It's right here.
Yeah, because again, floodwaters would just,
Well, that'll get cleaned up when we put the planting there, because
Okay.
that's where the plantings are going.
Well, it's on the other side of the fence.
Oh, okay.
It's
I
not,
see your point.
it's on the water side of the
Yeah,
Oh, it's on the
fence.
water.
the prior owner had a dumping ground there.
Yeah.
branches over here.
Yeah, and we just kind of routinely ask people to clean that up. And yeah, that's all I have.
I don't have any additional questions.
Okay. I guess there are a few items that are outstanding that we would want to see. So I think we'll have to keep this, Rick, until we get the details of the easement, the planting plan with the stuff there, so.
Would it be possible to have it written up so that if the commission is satisfied, you guys could vote on it the same night, or would we then have to go into September? That's just a question that
Because this is going to get heard for planning and zoning
Right.
shortly.
like in 6 days.
Well, proceed. You're not the first person to ask that question, Rob.
It's my job to ask the question.
Yeah, I would say one step at a time. I mean, we accommodate you guys,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
let's.
mean, right
let's-
now, I think it's a little early to start to noodle on that. But I'm not the chairman.
No, I honestly think that we could, you're gonna have your meeting in 6 days anyway, so there's, I'm not gonna say it's the I'd have to read the resolution and then approve it, okay? So until it gets approved, but you can have your meeting with P and Z, okay? And, but, you know, I agree with Peter, I want to read that and define the open space, because I didn't realize that. So what I would like to do is, yes, we can come up with a draft, okay, but, and this is a, capital B here on this one, is there are a number of issues that have to be outstanding, and we can address them. And then, assuming we come to some sort of resolution on that, we can vote that night, okay? Or condition it into the resolution like that, just to keep the process, moving here. When you guys, I'll also say that you're assuming we have a quorum in August. Okay, August, vacation month. So, because that was one of my items of business here after this, is to say who's going to be around in August. Okay, because, there's, we have a,
meeting?
pardon?
What day is the August meeting?
I think it's the 6th, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be the 6th.
So it should be the 6th. So we can see. I'll be here, but I'm one of.
What's the
four.
sense of urgency?
When do you plan to break ground?
We were hoping, a couple months ago, we were hoping to.
Don't short circuit this, do it this right, they gotta put in stuff, see.
Yeah, we're gonna get that. Well, we're gonna get that. Okay, and I'm not making a commitment to, we will have a draft of a resolution, but if we're not satisfied with whatever the answers are to our questions, it's just another piece of paper. Okay, it's not there.
We're happy to accommodate. The only sense of urgency is we didn't know we had to come here because we didn't know that it was in the jurisdiction, and so we submitted to the wrong one first, and so our fault, we wasted 2 months. And so everything has just already been delayed, and that's on us. So we appreciate you accommodating in whatever way you can if we get you what you need. And if you have outstanding questions, we appreciate it. We'll have to come back and address them.
So what the thought process is you'd like to try and get the pool in before the freeze so you can use it in the spring, right?
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right. You've seen this movie before.
Yeah. And the pool guy will put the pool in for you because he'll have the time, but
Correct.
come springtime, you're
He
with
will.
300 other people from one
That's
given pool company.
That's right.
Right.
Same as everybody else.
We got you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will be away on the 6th.
Well, so who's going to present your piece?
Kate, yeah. But Kate,
Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Moving on, approval of minutes. We have approval of, all commissioners should have received the minutes of May 14, meeting 2025. Any questions or comments on the minutes? No?
Nope.
No, no, no. Okay.
I make a motion to approve EPC meeting minutes from special meeting of May 14th, 2025.
Second that motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor?
Michael, you weren't here, so I don't think you can vote. Can you?
That was a special meeting when we met with,
It says you weren't here.
yeah, well, he has to abstain, with Neil Desai.
And you weren't here either, so.
No, it's okay. I won't fight you at this time of day.
That was with the plan
No,
of
you two are-
conservation development.
Yeah, that was
Just-
PLCD. That
I
was
rescind my vote.
Yeah.
It's okay, 2 abstentions.
Okay.
Okay, moving on for the approval of minutes, June 4, 2024. Everybody, all the commissioners should have received a copy of them. Are there any questions or comments? Nope, nope, nope. Oh,
Nope. So
Go
I'll
ahead.
make a motion to approve the EPC minutes from the regular meeting of June 4th, 2025.
Second that motion, June 4th, 2025.
All in favor? Great. No other business. A motion to adjourn, please.
Did you have something else that you want to talk about?
What, the,
Who is going to be here?
yeah, on, what, August 6th?
Yeah.
Does anybody, I know this is a month away. Does anybody know for a fact that they're not going to be here?
I'll be on a plane coming from the West Coast, so I won't be here.
Okay,
I'll be here.
you'll be here.
I'll be here.
I'll be here.
I plan to be here. I will not be here
No,
the
no,
following
no,
month.
no, we understand, it's a month out.
Yeah.
Right,
It's a
right.
month out and,
We've got a bunch of deals up in the air, so I may be asked to last
Go.
minute jet somewhere, but for the time being,
okay, but we have 4 for a quorum. Okay, which is, yeah, so we have 4 for a quorum just in case. And, okay, so that's good. So you got that right. Okay. How about a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn EPC meeting of July 8th.
Actually, it's the 9th.
Oh, the 9th, excuse me.
Second the motion to adjourn meeting Wednesday, July 9th.
All in favor? Okay. Good night, Channel 79.